Ulonkata bati yada tó yẹ kó máa da ifá. Inú tó yẹ kó jẹun ló fi bí pa. Ọba tálá, ọba takuntakun. Ṣàngó, Èṣù, Ògún, Ọya, Ọ̀ṣun. Ìwọ ló ń bọ̀ nílé yìí. Kí ni ìṣẹ̀ṣe tán ṣe nílé yìí o? Ó jẹ́ lọ jára.
Alafia, peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Welcome to another episode of the African Spirituality Experience. I am your host, Orisha Bami, and today we're joined by a Titan. It's kind of dope how the universe is aligning, man. I just got exposed to this brother's channel like maybe a month ago, if that. Got to meet him like a few days ago, not even a week, and here we are making it happen, making it do what it do. So with that, no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the African Spirituality Experience, Brother Bdell 1014. Nice for you to join us, man. I appreciate you.
Peace. Nice to meet you.
Sure. So with that, when it comes to the work that you do, right? Because you do some really dope work. I love like the way you put the receipts into your presentations on your channel. What would you consider yourself to be in regards to the work that you do? Would you consider yourself to be a freedom fighter, a revolutionary, or like just a teacher? Like, how would you kind of categorize the work that you do?
I consider myself as an end times eschatologist and a spiritual revolutionary. That way I'm able to combine the spirituality mixed in with the eschatological timelines that's taking place when you're talking about modern day events and how it lines up to prophecy.
Sure. No, that's what's up. Okay. And then, so like, how did you get first exposed to the work? Because clearly you have done a lot of research and you've also presented a lot of information. So like, what was your first exposure to, like consciousness or studying, esoteric wisdom and knowledge?
Well, the inception of it, my mom, she was a part of the Nuwapian nation with the Ancestral community. So I was already tapped in with the great majority of Dr. York's publications. And then over the course of time, I became a part of, the MUUR Science Temple where I got my edification from. And, unfortunately, my grand sheik, he passed away. So I'm not a part of any temple right now. And the only temple that I was a part of was the only one that we had in Southern Indiana. So as far as that, like the inception of it started with Dr. Malachi York's work, and then it transitioned into MUUR Science. But when you look at the whole multitude of the spiritual work in itself and the dynamics of it, they pretty much work in conjunction. It's pretty much one and the same because Dr. York, he was propagating, sovereignty, just like, the Prophet Noble Ali was.
Okay. No, that's what's up. Yeah, no, I love it. And I saw it like from the very beginning. I think the first one, I can't even remember which one of the ones that kind of came across my timeline, but whichever one it was, I tapped into him like, yo, bro, it's dope. Like, he definitely knows his stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, he really tapped in. And so I knew immediately you had to have a background that's pretty much similar to like what you what you pretty much broke down for us. So with that, let's just dive in, man, because we had some really, I feel like enlightening, conversations off here where I got to kind of really, see who you are and what you're about and what you stand for. And I feel like there's a lot of dope alignment with that. But when it comes to where we are right now on May 25th, 2025, where does the atmosphere in which we're in right now, from the physical aspects as well as the universal, I should say, the astrological aspects, how does that tie in to some of the chain of events that we're seeing unfold right before our very eyes, especially when we talk about things in regards to like the solar flares that we just had, that just came the other day? Like, how does all this tie into where we are right now?
Well, the solar flares that you see, these coronal mass ejections is operating at a gamma radiation, which manipulates the electrical grid node of the planet. So this is why you see the rise of a technocrat system, but it's only going to have a temporal power over it because we all know that, anything that's built on imperialism or anything that's built on colonization doesn't have no type of sustainability as far as their civilization. So when you've seen these coronal mass ejections coming in, that is what they call the ancestors coming back, right? And it's revitalizing and waking up, the dynamics and the minerals and the plasmoids and everything. It's basically waking up planet Earth. So we're going through a shifting process, which is based on a reset. So this is all connected to the precessional circle of the equinox, which is what they call the cosmic clock, because the cosmic clock coincides with the financial debt clock system that's a part of their corporations. So this is also in connection with the doomsday clock as well. So everything that they do operates in cycles by way of those clock systems. So this is why you're having a reset in the political infrastructure. This is why you're having a reset in the entertainment industry, the music industry, movie industry. All the industries are starting to unfold right now. So this is, it's all based on judgment as well. So it's a form of prophecy that's taking place.
Oh yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, that's real, and I see it too, and it's something that we've spoke about, a lot of times on this channel in regards to the cycles. With the 20, some would say 25, some would say 24, some would say 26,000 year. The 6,000 year cycles that we're kind of into, right?
Yeah.
So we just came out of, what was it? The Piscean age, right? And we're going into the Aquarian age, right? So how does that tie into, when we talk about these 6,000 year cycles and how significant they are in regards to what's taking place on the planet? How does that tie into some of what you just shared with us about the solar flares, as well as the fall of all these systems, whether it's the religion, the dollar, the military, et cetera? Like, how does all that tie into what we're seeing with the numerical 6,000 year cycle?
So when you look at the numerical 6,000 year cycle, it's the personification of the 24,000 year verification period. So it operates on 4 different cycles. You got a sun cycle, a moon cycle, and a sun cycle. So now we're at the apex of solar cycle 25 because we're in solar cycle. We're in the last sun cycle. So that means it has to be facilitated by a matriarch, which is galvanized by the people, which is a republic. So that means that the divine feminine energy is bringing balance right back to the planet. Because when you're talking about the end of the world, you're really talking about the end of an age. And the end of an age was the clay age of the 6,000 years that the so-called Shaitan, the devil, had over the planet. So now we're transitioning into the golden age, which is the Aquarian age, that is facilitated by the sun cycle. So now you got these coronal mass ejections hitting the planet, and they doing all type of genetic manipulation, and they're basically trying to build all these underground bunker systems because their genetical format doesn't have the G-force to withstand the UV radiation light spectrum that's coming from the cosmos. So this is why they want to amplify a technocrat system with Neuralink, right? Because they don't have the Neuromelanin to activate that Christ consciousness that takes them, outside of, the firmament and all these dimensional planes of what we call the Demiurge, or what we call in the esoterics the Metatronic overlay, which is the dualistic paradox.
Yeah. That's deep. That's real. I love that because you tapped into something that I was going to go into anyways. But when you talk about this Neuralink, right, and we talk about melanin, we was just talking about that on one of the last live streams I had. I think last Saturday I was talking about with like melanin and the difference between melanin, neuromelanin, and then also going all the way back to Kemet when you saw that Asar was green, like his skin was green.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Naturally, when you go to the purest form of melanin, it actually is green, and that's why you see it on the temple walls in Kemet. So can you kind of break down how the neuromelanin is one aspect, regular melanin is another, but then why those people who are creating Neuralink and all these other virtual reality existences, or whatever you want to call it, can you kind of tie into how that matters to what's happening right now on the planet, especially when you talk about the solar flares and how it's manipulating the environment?
Yes. Well, these solar flares, they create melanocytes, which are basically intelligence molecules. So it works in tandem with the brain essential nervous system melanin. And that melanin has the ability to activate the Christ body in the crystalline state to where you go from, a form of transduction to activate the neuroendocrine transducers. So this is what we call the piezoelectrical crystals in the brain that activates the Merkaba light ship, which is the biological suit to escape the firmament. But you got to have a certain genetical format, and you have to have a certain neurological format. Now, when you're talking about the Canaanite, the cursed seed in the book of Leviticus, when they breaking down their genetic format, when you're talking about the cursed ones with leprosy, the ones that was cursed with leprosy, that leprosy is basically a vampiric disease, right? Because like I said, the UV radiation light spectrum doesn't harmonize with their genetics, the epidermis layer of their skin. So the epidermis layer of the skin, see, when it comes to sunburns or sun cancer or whatever, all these other things, and the surface level is not getting cooked. It's the underlayer of the surface because they have eukaryotic cells. Eukaryotic cells is spliced DNA. So that means that it's basically a form of a genetic mutation, which ties our way back when the European or the Canaanite that was created in 4086 BC on the island of Patmos, right? And they came out of those cave systems because, like I said, Europe is it's a desolate land. There's no type of sun that comes to that geographical area, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is why the dogs, they used to lick the leprosy sores of the European. So this is where you get the term, a man is a dog's best friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of those things like the Canaanite was basically the foot soldier for the Canaan was the foot soldier for the Canaanite.
Mm.
They also have the same genetic format as well when you're talking about spliced DNA.
Mm.
So now we're going back into the sun cycle. So solar cycle 25 is, it activates, certain, things on the planet, such as like, planetary shifts, volcano eruptions, earthquakes. But, that also coincides with our genetic format as well. Since we're connected to the planet, we're getting those same planetary upgrades, except the Canaanite that was cursed with leprosy.
Okay. All right. So yeah, we on our way in, family. We on our way in. So now when it comes to what we're seeing with the kind of changing of the guard, somebody in the chat said it, this power is shifting, the shift of power. I'm not sure who it was, but yeah, that's real. It's really happening. When it comes to all of this, can you kind of share, because I've been mentioning about the Black Pope for a long time on the channel before all this stuff took place. And so I was telling you, when we spoke the other day, how excited I was to see the work that you did on the presentation you did about the Black nobility, because I was like, shoot, that work already been done. I could just send people the link to that one. I ain't even got to do that video because my bro already did it. But can you kind of break down how deep this goes when we talk about this thing called religion, and then we talk about those who control and manipulate this whole entire infrastructure? We're talking about the Vatican, and then we're talking about people behind the scenes who are the ones pulling the strings like a puppet. Can you kind of tie in or tap in for the tribe who might not be familiar with your work or might not know anything about the Black nobility? Can you kind of tie into how all that, kind of plays a role into what we're seeing as this whole thing shifts and unfolds?
Okay. Well, the Black nobility is the black hand, and the black hand is the hidden hand, and the hidden hand is the one who controls the European on the surface. So you have two different diametrical differences of bloodlines on the planet, which ties all the way back into ancient Sumeria when you're talking about Enki and Enlil. Enki is the ones that's connected to Earth, because when you break down the etymology of the word Enki, it means Lord of Earth. So that means that the Earthborn, who are the indigenous people of America, are connected to that bloodline. Then you got the seeds of Enlil. En means Lord, Lil means sky, Lord of the sky, which is acclimated to Satan being the prince of air. So Enlil has a faction of bloodline that he created to overthrow the seeds of Enki, when you're talking about the cursed ones for 6,000 years. So now we're seeing a transition of power. So we went from a patriarchal form of colonization that created patrilineal systems within their corporations. And now you're going back into a matriarchal energy, which is matrilineal for the indigenous people, to where the man rules through the woman, to where they have balance. So now when you're talking about, as far as the transitional process, I lost my train of thought. What was the other part of the question?
It was pretty much just breaking down how there's a secret, I guess, handler that's kind of like,
okay, I got it now.
Yeah.
The Black nobility. You also have Colochians. Colochians are some of the first Europeans, or the first Canaanites that was in the Caucasus Mountains. So when you go all the way back to that bloodline, those are the ones that's connected to the Ashkenazi Jew over in the Ukraine that works with the libertarian aspect when you're talking about the Democrats, right? So this ties all the way back into the socio-political aspect of civics, because the church and the state is not separate. So this is why they created religious papacy with Pope Alexander VI and Pope Nicholas. And then that's when they also implemented the Inquisition with Queen Isabella in 1468. So the religious papacy, this is why I said you got to step away from the religion, because the religion is what they use to put jurisdiction over you, right? So the religion, like I said, you get to the etymon of the word, the linguistics or whatever. The word Christian translates to the word black in the Strong Concordance. So that's why I was telling, the brother last night, words are spells. So it's really deep that we got to dissect these words to see the underlying message of what's taking place. But going back to what I was saying, the Black nobility created religious papacy for the Europeans to overthrow the ones that's connected to America. That's what they was basically used for. So that's why when you look at some of these neoclassical arts, you can see the European being a form of a black man coming over to make deals with the indigenous people over in America. So that means, like I said, you got two different bloodlines. So the black conquistadors, a great majority of them are part of the faction of Enlil, right? So so that's the thing, though. Everybody, just because we all look the same doesn't mean that we come from the same bloodline. Because if that was the case, we wouldn't have, different blood types, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's real too, because when you speak on that, it's like I could tell somebody that was born here, in this country of America or this corporation of America versus somebody who might have been born in Africa, or somebody who was born in the islands, or somebody who was born, what I mean? Just by look, I could tell by the facial structure, what I mean? It's just so many different features that I could tell, that they're from a different place, or at least their place of origin, what I mean? Although we all are melanated. And so it's something that it goes deep when you talk about how deep it is when you go all the way back, through the bloodlines. When you talk about Enki and Enlil, when you're talking about these beings, or you want to talk, even if you bring into the picture Anu, you know what I'm saying? Like, how does all this tie into the ancients when we talk about this thing called the Anunnaki?
Well, when you're talking about the Anunnaki, when you break down the etymology, it means those sent by Anu to Ki. Ki means Kai. Kai means planet Earth. So that means that we're basically baby Masons, because we.
My bad.
Huh?
I didn't mean to cut you off. Can you say that again? Because I'm sure some people might have wanted to hear that, but couldn't make it out. Only because, the way you broke it down, though.
Yeah, Anunnaki, when you look at the word, it means those sent by Anu to Ki. Ki means Kai, and Kai means planet Earth. So when you look at a Freemasonic symbol, it has the letter G in there. But the G is the prefix of the word Geo. Geo means QI in the esoterics, which equates to Ki, which is planet Kai. So that's why I said that Enki, E-N-K-I, is basically the ones that come from the Lord of Earth. So that means it's our birthright to have dominion over the planet. That's why in the Moorish Science Temple, when you wear the fez, the tassel is what connects you to the land, right? Because your nationality comes from the word nativity. Nativity is birthright, your navel cord that belongs to you, that ties you back to the land, basically.
Yeah, no, I love it. Excuse me. And now there is, because I think a lot of people get misconstrued in regards to the different types of Moors, because you have the Moors who wear the fez, and then you have, you know what I mean? So can you kind of break down for that, the difference? Because some people, if they hear about the black nobility, for example, and they don't know anything else, they're going to think that all Moors, you know what I'm saying, are terrible. But then if you have people like yourself who's very knowledgeable, or who's even born and raised in that culture, like it, because you was born and raised in it in regards to your path, so you can break it down and decipher to differentiate between the two of them. So can you kind of share like the differences between the ones who are, righteous and the ones who are considered to be the dirty ones?
Okay. Well, the ones, they have documentation in court. When you get an 1848 Supreme Court decision on June 6th, it says that the geographical landmass of America belongs to the title holder is the Moors, who have emerged. The one that's spelt with two U's and an R and an S. Those are the ones that's connected to the 5 civilized tribes that was also connected to Atlantis and Lemuria and other, fifth dimensional civilizations. Now, the Blackamoor was being controlled by black nobility. That is basically the two diametrical differences. That's when the Blackamoor, they came over here with religious papacy and gave, the European the edification of maritime law and things of that nature. So that's really the difference between the two. The ones that's propagating the system, that's trying to keep you connected to the corporation. By way of
my bad. Go ahead, bro.
I was saying just by way of the religion, because the religion is what took us out of our sovereign capacity. Was the religion aspect of it.
Right. That's facts. And now, so when you talk about those who took us out of a path and took us, off of our path and our track, our journey before the 1492 era and all that stuff, can you kind of break down how this territory that we reside on right now is actually a corporation, and like how that corporation is tied to, the Vatican, or tied to London, or tied to, the District of Columbia, in that arm of what we're looking at with this 3-headed monster type thing that we're looking at? Can you kind of break down how that all plays into the system and into, this whole construct that they're trying to rule by?
Okay. Well, you got the Uniform Commercial Code, Title 18, Section 3002, page 86, third paragraph. It says that the United States is a corporation. Now, what makes it a corporation is that the religious systems that's connected to the corporation under a patrilineal system what they did was, like I said, they created religious papacy with I think it was the doctrine of discovery, and then that's when they also implemented the Inquisition during that time period. So the doctrine of discovery was implemented in 1493. So the religion aspect of it coincides with the church and the state not being separate, when it's actually, supposed to. It's against the law for the church and the state to be working in synergy like that, which is why they create their corporations. So then when you also look at the Vatican owns 170 billion acres of land internationally, where they built their churches, their schools, their banks, everything that's a part of their corporations on top of the matriarch. So it's what cultivated capitalism, which also created separatism and individualism amongst the household, because everything is built on capital now. Everything is about, a monetary system. So that's why everything that's connected to their systems of patriarchy was acclimated to the moon. Moon day, money, monarchy, monotheism. All these things is a moon energy, right? So that means that the moon fall, as you have the rise of consciousness by the sun, is taking place. It's reversing the polarity of everything that was created by that faction of people. So and as far as like the corporation, dismantling itself, an American Pope denotes the fact that it's basically the end of the corporation. And the reason I say that is because the Vatican, it owns a great majority of the stocks in BlackRock and things of that nature. So that also coincides with the fact that the Queen that just died, and she had the seal off Buckingham Palaces off the fence or whatever. So when you have the king and the queen, it's kind of like it's like a galactical chess game that's taking place. So the queen was gone first, but the game ain't over until the king falls, and that was the Pope, who was controlling all those factions. So you had the fall of the monetary system, the fall of the military, and then you have the fall of the church. So this is where you have the rise of the people to get, everything back to them, as far as, connected right back to Mother Nature.
Yeah, no, I love it. We had somebody, let me find this comment. This is an excellent comment right here. We got a lot of them, but this one stood out. So pretty much 23 Archer, 28, 23 Archer, 28. I believe they're asking in regards to like the black nobility or the dirty Moors, these low vibrational, evil beings. How do we get rid of them? What is the process that we see of like extermination of the parasites?
Well, everything in the universe moves on a logistical principle. So it's one of those things where the universe has to have a shifting power, where the meek shall inherit the earth. So it's nothing that you have to do physically. You just got to watch and let it play out and do your work. Stay in your own spiritual lane, because there's going to be a great separation on the planet, and it's going to be happen by way of a separation of consciousness. So that means that everybody's not going to be thinking at high vibrational frequencies. You're going to have some individuals that's pushing Luciferianism, pushing the religion, pushing everything that's connected to the hedonistic culture of Western civilization. So that's why I said that's where you're going to have a separation. They're going to separate, they're going to, eradicate themselves.
Yeah. Shout out to Big Chief, Brother Rod Hayes, because we was talking about something similar to this last week. He was saying, like, especially with these solars, it's nuts how the whole the synchronism and like the alignment happened too, because we was just talking about the solar flares and like how the level of consciousness on the planet is rising in the solar system, the different spheres that, all play a role into what we're seeing right now. And I'll be damned if I think it was like either within the next day or within a couple of days is when we saw the breaking news about the big solar flare that was coming, right? And you've been talking about it on your channel a lot too. You got several videos that dives into that. Now, can you break down in regards to how this energy is so powerful? I heard you speak about the black sun. How you pronounce it? Ophiuchus?
Yes. Yep.
Can you kind of break down like how this all this kind of ties in together with what we're seeing and what we're experiencing, at this time?
Well, when you seeing the spiritual sun, which is the fifth dimensional sun, they call it the star Polaris. It gives, it operates on fractions of light that powers the two celestial bodies within the simulation, which is the sun and the moon. And the sun and the moon operates off fractions of light, and it gives power to the black sun. So that's when you look at the Freemasonic symbol, it's basically doing the same thing. It's basically corresponding with the celestial alignments that's taking place that works in synergy with the black sun. So the black sun is the embodiment of dark matter energy. Dark matter energy is activated by way of the energies of carbon when you have these neutrinos that's hitting the planet. Neutrinos are basically Holy Ghost particles. Holy Ghost particles activates the planet. So those are the ones that's connected to the planet is the ones that's going to get that Christ consciousness, because Ophiuchus that corresponds with the black sun is a representation of Jesus walking on water.
Yes, sir. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. We just getting warmed up, family. Look, we ain't even took the warm-ups off. We just made it to the gym, just kind of jogging a little slow jog around the arena. but yeah, we about to get ready to lace them up and get ready to have the tip off because we about to go. I was just talking about neutrinos. I can't even remember which episode it was on, but I was talking to the tribe about neutrinos and how powerful they are, especially considering the particles that they are and how they can go through pretty much everything. You just said that they kind of have a similarity or a connectivity to like Christ consciousness. Now, when you're talking about Christ consciousness, you're talking about the black sun, you're talking about Ophiuchus, you're talking about all these different energies and these stars and all this powerful energy sources, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does all of that line up with you talk about the star of Polaris? There was a scene that I remember seeing in one of your videos where you showed a clip where there was something in London, I want to say, and it was like a astrological star that looked similar to the Yami signal that was in the sky. And you broke down, like you shared the video and you kind of broke down how that meant to the returning to, I forgot what it was, how you broke it down, but can you kind of share the significance of that visitation, or not that visitation, but that, I would say, sighting, and how that plays into exactly what you're breaking down when you're talking about the black sun, neutrinos, all this,
Are you saying like, are you talking about when I was talking about going back into the galactic center?
That's what it was, yeah. And then you showed the video where I think it was in London or somewhere where they had the
because the galactic center is the epitome of the Milky Way star constellation. When you look at the sigil of the Milky Way star constellation, it looks like a swastika. The swastika is also the embodiment of the black sun. So that's why that was basically the connection between the two by way of the symbolism.
Got you. Now, when you talk about the black sun, is that sun the same as the sun that's in the inner Earth, or is that another sun that's in our solar system, like in our vicinity, that we don't necessarily see, or do we actually have the ability to see this black sun? Like, where is this black sun located?
I think this black sun I call it the black chakra. So the black chakra is actually, the activation of the neuromelanin. As you amalgamate, this is where you're talking about the whole galvanization of the 144,000. I think that energy alone is what activates the black sun, which is actually. I think it's more symbolic and metaphorical than actually physical.
I got you.
Really, all you talking about is dark matter energy. That's all. Just like when you watch the movie Lucy, when she rose up in consciousness so much, she didn't need a physical body. She turned into dark matter energy. She turned into black, brain and central nervous system melanin. Dark matter.
Now, is the dark matter energy different from ether, or are they both kind of one and the same? Or what would your take be on ether and black matter energy?
Well, it kind of from my opinion, I think they work in conjunction because when you look at the sigil of Tahuti, right, it's showing you a tetrahedron. A tetrahedron is also the embodiment of a dodecahedron. The dodecahedron is the fifth element, and the fifth element is the quintessential alchemical element. So that embodies everything in nature, which is basically us. So that's when you look at the word Orisha, Orisha, which means a ruler of the ethers, masters of the ethers, right? This is the four basic elements: earth, air, water, and fire. But it embodies everything. The only thing that embodies everything is the ether, and that's us. We're connected to nature.
Yeah, so I love it.
Being able to, withstand the G forces of nature all at once.
I love it. And now, so when we talk about the 144,000, we talk about the Christ body and this Christ consciousness, right? How does all of that kind of align with the rise of the Black Messiah, or I should say the Black consciousness in the collective. You know what I mean? Because we see Brother Ibrahim Traore doing what he's doing over there. We see a lot of brothers over here, you know, on our side, you know, freedom fighters are standing in the front line doing the work here, and we're seeing a lot of different places rise up in support of what's going on, you know, with Brother Traore over there, as well as the alignments that he's making, you know, with other superpowers. How does all of this kind of tie into where we see the world shifting with everybody, you know, almost taking a stance against and in opposition of Western colonialism or the Western hemisphere so-called powers that be?
See, if you notice, you know, over in the Western world, we're more, we like to propagate our revolutionary aspects, you know, through word of mouth, you know what I'm saying? Speaking against the system. While as the, you know, when you get to the Eastern hemisphere, they're more proactive. They actually do what, you know, actually what they follow and teach or whatever. So the shift is going to take place is when you're going to have the waters from the East collaborate with the waters from the West. This is an occultic symbolism, meaning that it's basically a shift in power. So this is where you're going to see the ones that was talking the talk on to start walking the walk. So it's going to be one of those things where you're going to build sustainable, you know, land developments and coming together, you know, galvanizing our resources. But the inception of that whole thing is that it can only be done when you have some type of calamity on the planet. That's the only thing that's going to bring everybody together.
Yeah.
Because you know, like, because America's under judgment. America's under judgment. Those was the 3 solar eclipses that took place from 2017, 2023, and 2024. Those 3 solar eclipses, they put an ancient Hebrew tab over the planet, or just over the geographical landmass of America. So that is basically a representation of Alpha and Omega, which is creation and destruction. And within that destruction, that's going to bring us all together. So that's how I see it. That's just, you know, from my, you know, that's my logical assertion on that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, but you laying a lot of it down on your channel though, and try, you know, for those who don't know Brother's work, man, check out his channel, Bdell 1014 on YouTube. It's a powerful channel. My boy doing great work, and I love it. I check out, you know, whenever I can. I'm tapped in because I already know you're gonna drop some dope knowledge, but also you're gonna have receipts to back it up, and that's the part that I love, you know, in regards to the thorough research you do, you know, for the presentations that you put on your channel. So when it comes to that, right? You mentioned, you know, the Christ consciousness, and you mentioned the beings, you know, that went back into antiquity, like how they all kind of tie into some of the ancient civilizations of Lemuria and Atlantis. Can you kind of share the significance of the ancients and how I feel like we're headed back into a time kind of like what was, you know, at the pinnacle of the height of civilizations, you know, when we had the ancients, you know, ruling like of Lemuria and Atlantis. Can you kind of break down how those civilizations play a role in what we're seeing now? Because due to like my personal research, I've seen it, like the planet always goes in cycles to where it goes to the heights of, you know, of technology and information and all that. And catastrophe, whether it's a great flood, whether, you know what I'm saying, so many different things that happen. Can you kind of break down the ancients and how the significance of the ancients and the ancient civilizations that we all, you know, study or we all marvel under or over, how that kind of ties into what we're seeing now in real time here in 2025?
All right. Before I get started, a good movie. If those who are, you know, if you're into anime or whatever, if you watch this cartoon that's on YouTube, it's called The Law of the Sun. It breaks down what everything you just said. It shows you the transitional shifts when you had, you know, civilization, you know, operate at an abundant level, 5th dimensional civilizations where everybody had, you know, one world, you know, type of knowledge, but it wasn't based on hedonistic practices. It was based on something that was basically evolutionary to get to the next, you know, states of ascension. So you had the fall of Atlantis, then, you know what I'm saying, you had the continental drift, you had Pangea, then you had ancient Kemet, you had the fall of Tartaria. What happens is that when the system gets to the apex of the speculum of a cycle, when it gets to a certain point, like, for instance, everything is getting worse. It's, you know what I'm saying, to the point where they have to propagate inversion and giving you the illusion of progressiveness. Like they try to say that a man can go to a woman's bathroom if he dresses like and identify as such. So the illusion of progressiveness that's operated by way of inversion denotes the fact that the system has to go through a reset. The food is getting worse. The music is getting worse. Every TV seems kind of fake now. Don't nobody really indulge in anything that was connected to the external world now. This is why you see the rise of creators. They like, hey, I'm tired of this old world. It's time for us to start creating, because this is why you had the fall of Hollywood. Sports ain't even the same. Nothing hits the same. So everything has to go through a reset. So that's how you know that this is the end of the world, because it's the end of the Canaanite faction that is being controlled by black nobility archonic forces.
Actually, I love it.
Yeah,
and it's clear too. I mean, even like you said, even like with TV, like all the simple things that everybody used to be so riled up and geeked up about, it's like it don't even matter no more. But I feel like it's because the elevation and the rise of consciousness. You know what I mean? Like me personally, I stopped watching TV years ago. I'll say well over 10 plus years ago, when I first started doing my work as a speaker or as a coach, consultant, whatever, speaking to people. Right. Yeah. That's when I stopped watching TV, because I'm like, why am I going to waste my time watching somebody else who's living their dream, getting compensated, getting paid to do whatever it is they doing, but I could be building my own, you know what I'm saying? And working, focusing on mine. If I'm going to be on there, at least I'm going to collect some coins while I'm on there. You know what I mean? Instead of being me watching somebody else living their dream and I'm just wasting time and I'm not doing anything, you know what I mean, to add value to myself, my family, my community, my culture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where I love the fact where I'm seeing brothers who are rising, sisters who are rising, who are standing out and putting themselves in the forefront to teach, to empower, to enlighten, to uplift, our people. And that's one of the things, matter of fact, I wanted to get into before we got deep, but let me double back to that real quick. So shout out to all the brothers and sisters who's going to be a part of this event that's going on, June 28th at Stone Mountain? You want to kind of share some of that with the tribe real quick before we take back off?
Okay, there's going to be a big event on June 28th in Stone Mountain, Georgia. It's going to be Billy Carson, Vicky Dillard, Black Magic 363, who we call Radiohead Rich, Red and Blue Pill, KT the Arch Degree, Dr. B Serious, 19 Keys, Yaya 777, Mama T, and other individuals. Everybody's going to be at Stone Mountain, Georgia on June 28th in Atlanta, Georgia.
I sure. Yes, sir.
And I don't have a flyer yet for it, so once I get the information, I'll print out the flyer or whatever and post it on my, my social medias or whatever. For
sure. Oh yeah, send it my way too, man, because I definitely put it up.
Okay.
And there's time. Hopefully we'll get to chop it up a few more times at least 1 or 2 times before that even takes place. But I definitely
it's a free event. It's a free event. It don't cost nothing. It's going to be a really powerful event. It's going to be thousands of people there, so we need to bring that energy here right after the summer solstice. So when you get all that energy in one place, that's going to leave an energetic imprint in the ethers. That energy is going to be there. It's going to be long lasting. And that's the type of energy we need right now. Salute the bridge.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's facts. And with that being said, you said that there's a couple different things that are kind of looming, right? So I know we've all heard about the potential of California, kind of breaking off into the ocean or what have you. Or we've also, I saw you, I think you're the first person I see that spoke about the fall of the Golden Gate Bridge out there, in the Bay Area in Cali. We've been hearing about that for a long time, especially those who have studied metaphysics or, who have been in this consciousness space for a while. We've all heard about these things, about maybe earthquake or something that may form some sort of significant catastrophe to kind of separate the California area from the rest of the West Coast. So I saw on one of the episodes you uploaded not too long ago, you were speaking about those, I think it was like underwater volcanoes over out in Oregon, was it? I think it was. Can you kind of break down a little bit about what that's about and the potential of how catastrophic that could be if that was to unfold and take place?
Well, the Seamount Axle that's in near Oregon is in Northern California. That's also in connection with Mount Shasta. Now, Mount Shasta is the root chakra of planet Earth. So they said if that earthquake, or the volcano erupts, it can trigger over 10,000 earthquakes within, going all across America. Now, remember I was telling you about those solar eclipses. Those solar eclipses that is in connection where they was at the apex of the solar eclipse, which was the return of the black sun. And those 3 locations is the same places where you have the New Madrid fault line, you have the Cascadian Seduction Zone, and it's also connected to that fault line over in Mount Shasta. So that's judgment. So this could be the trigger warning or the or the calamity that can, start up, the restoration process. But, you also cannot negate, like I broke down in the 80-year cycle block theory. Every 80 years in a seculum of a cycle, there's a crisis that basically, transitions humanity into a different direction. So in the last 80 years, in 1965, which was the end of World War II, right? 80 years from that is 2025. So we due for another calamity. We due for another war. We don't know if it's going to be the collapse of the grid system. We don't know. It can be in many different things, because the fall of the Vatican, when you're talking about the 5 portals that the Pope opened up on January 1st, on New Year's, he took those keys of papacy and he unlocked the pineal gland. He unlocked and resurrected, because those keys was a representation of locking down the genetic format, those who harmonize with the planet as we go back into the galactic center. So that's why he was opening up those portals. So because the religion is what put an encryption over the planet. So he unlocked a certain consciousness. So the silver key is the silver cord that connects you to the moon. So that moon is what keeps you in a perpetual state of reincarnation by way of the belief system that comes from the Vatican, right? Because it keeps you boxed in. And the boxed in of the mindset is the vesicular monomind transporter 2 gene. That is the God gene. It keeps you boxed in into a certain construct, which is what we call the cube of Saturn, right? Saturn worship is religious worship. Materialism, whatever, it's all based on, the cube of Saturn. So when you have the activation of these earthquakes or whatever, that's when you're going to see, they're going to try to implement their cybernetic dictatorship, because it's going to be, I don't know, it's kind of like 2 different timelines that's going on. I don't know if it's going to be something that's going to be activated by the ancestors, the activation of nature, or I don't know if they using bombs underneath, these geographical areas in America to, create this reset. So it's many different things to look at. Some things are engineered and some things is just happening natural.
Yeah, it's deep, real deep. Now, let me ask you your opinion on this, because I was just having this conversation. Not sure if it was last night or the night before. What's today? Today's Sunday. This is the Friday or Saturday night. I was talking about, it came up where we were talking about people who, I guess, like the billionaires and all these people who are buying all these underground bunkers and trying to, you know what I'm saying, like trying to hide into wherever they can get these little bunkers and all that built. But my thing was, the way I looked at it is like, I don't really see how they feel like that's going to protect them from, if the true wrath of the Creator and Mother Earth really want to turn up, you know what I'm saying, and shake some shit up real quick. Like, it's nothing that's going to do to me to like make sure you're going to be okay. If she getting you out of here, you're getting out of here, whether you go hide in the crevices of Earth, regardless. Because the way I see it is this: the earthquake, I feel like, could definitely still cause destruction to any of those bunkers who are, inside or in the earth or whatever. But at the same time, I was thinking too, like, what about the sun that's in the inner earth? Like, I feel like, do you feel like that could also have some sort of, I don't know, effect on like what could be catastrophic for those people who are calling themselves hiding away from, I guess, dealing with Mother Nature by hiding into these bunkers? Or what is your thoughts on that?
Well, just like you got 7 different planes of existence in the cosmos, you also got 7 layers to the planet. So when they going into these underground bunkers, they not even really getting to the apex, to the center. So because once you get there, you got, the city of Shambhala, you got Argartha, you got the rainbow cities, because you got different caverns of the earth and different cave systems and different pyramid systems that lead to Hollow Earth. But as far as them trying to escape the judgment, it's nothing they can really do about that. I mean, there's no explanation for that, because if the planet is going to get broken in half, then it's only so much you can do. But the only thing that's going to save you is that you have a certain consciousness. I told you, just like when you look at the sigil of Tahuti, it's the tetrahedron. That tetrahedron is the seal of God on your forehead. The activation of the right hemisphere of the brain and the left hemisphere of the brain, to where you rose up a degree mentally, right? To where you're able to activate the Merkaba. So that's why I said you have to be balanced here and here in order to lead. So that's why I said, like, that's the only thing that's going to save you in the next world. You got to be balanced. So just like, let's just say it is a rapture and we had, so-called entities coming from the abyss of the planet. they're not going to be able to touch you because you got the seal of God on your forehead. That is your protectorate. That's your force field. That's your energetic bubble that they cannot infiltrate because you're vibrating at a certain consciousness. Just like when you see the movie Predator, everything they had, when you look at the supernatural lens that he had, everything that was vibrating on a low frequency, he attacked it. But if you vibrating at the green frequency and above, the ultraviolet light to activate the crown chakra, you're going to have the frequency of the planet working in conjunction with the Schumann resonance, the heartbeat of planet Earth.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's funny because I keep a tetrahedron like right behind me, man. That's my little crystal ball. You know what I mean? Because like when the conversation get real hot, man, I turn it on and kind of cool it down a little bit because it get real. Yeah, it get real lit up in here sometimes, man. And so now with that, I love how you broke that down, and then we talk about the Merkaba and like meditation and the astral body and all these things. Before I go into that though, like what you're saying right now, it kind of reminds me of Bruce Leroy and what was it? Last Dragon, I think it was.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, when he had, you know what I'm saying, when he got into it, he got that, he had that energy and that melanin and all that, you know what I'm saying, like 9 ether percolating, boy. He just started glowing. Like he had that green glow, like, yeah, let's get it. Like what you want to do. All that kind of turns into like what we're talking about now, right? When you really tap in and elevate your frequency, whether it's the diet, whether it's the working out, whether it's the meditating, you know what I mean, eating healthy, all that does really help us to activate that sort of energy, right?
Yes, it does. You got to be balanced because I did a whole level up video. See, the thing, when you watch the movie Leroy, everything was based on external stimulation. He was looking for the master, not knowing that he was the master the whole time. So when he understood that, that's when he was able to tap into his power. He didn't look for the religion. He wasn't looking for no celebrity to guide him. He wasn't looking to all these forms of external stimulation. He tapped right back into himself. That's when he was able to raise up his consciousness to be like, I'm the master, I'm the one. And that's when he whooped up, shown up at the end. So that's what has to take place. That's why you see in the fall of religion. The fall of religion is the resurrection of you.
Yes.
That's what that is.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because that's how you unlock the scroll of all. So that's why I said the scroll of all corresponds with the chakra points of planet Earth. The more you raise up your consciousness, it's going to activate the planet. More earthquakes, more volcanoes, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So that's what's taking place.
Yeah, and we see them like where I'm at in the Southeast. We see them with the storms, with the tornadoes, and then that goes back to how the elements, when you talk about the Orishas, when you talk about the Netchers, these are all beings that are tied to elements of either consciousness or nature. You know what I mean? Whether it's Oya being tied to the winds and the water, whether it's Kabiesi Shango being tied to the thunder and the lightning, like either way it goes, like all of these entities and deities are all tied to some form or aspect of nature. The nature rules, the same thing. So it's like Ptah, you talk about Nun, you talk about, all these are all elements of nature, and they're all tied to real deities who we also have the ability to activate those aspects of nature within ourselves as well, right?
Sure.
So is that kind of like what we saw in Supercell, the series Supercell, where they showed the brothers and sisters who had the ability to kind of tap in to that next level?
Yeah.
How does
that happens because you got certain pocket points on planet Earth, and it's infiltrated it's coming down from the magnetosphere. The magnetosphere is what we call the mental plane, and that mental plane is creating neutrinos. Neutrinos work in harmony with the carbon body. Once the carbon body activates, that's when you get crystallization by going from the nitrogen 14 and 12 until where you go to a crystalline state. So this is where you activate that magnetism. Your magnetism is your magic. But the encryption over the planet. But like I said, you got to think outside the box, because we have when you go to the holonomic brain theory in the CIA documents, there is a holographic box over the brain, right? But you got to break out of that construct. It's like a firmament over the brain. You also have a firmament over the planet because it's part of the spiritual cutoff, right? So when you get I think the movie, when you're talking about the Tower of Babel, not the movie, but in biblical context, talking about the Tower of Babel, the Tower of Babel is also connected to the motor cortex gland of the brain. So when the Tower of Babel is basically talking about a fall in frequency, because during that time period, that's when you had the breaking up of different languages, because when the Tower of Babel failed, that's when people started babbling, because before then, that's when they had telepathic ability, right? So the firmament, these ideologies that's cultivated by the Western world is what keeps you out of your sovereign capacity and out of your spiritual capacity. This is why you don't have clairvoyance. This is where you don't have levitation, being able to levitate, all types of stuff. You don't have these powers no more. It's because everything's been cut off by the firmament and a certain ideology that they created by the Western world.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's deep. I love that, man. Oh, man, I love it. It's okay. So somebody asked the question. Let me pull it up real quick. Breakthrough 9 said, and I think we kind of tapped into a little bit of this, but if you don't mind sharing, like, what your opinion is in regards to the question of how can we raise our consciousness?
The best way to raise up your consciousness is to understand that balance is the key. Balance is the personification of equilibrium. Equilibrium is balance, which makes you God. So you got to be balanced mentally, and you also got to be balanced spiritually, right? So the best way to look at it is that, to understand is that anything that you cannot fast from, you're going to become a slave to it. So don't become a slave to anything that's three-dimensional. You have to use it as a catalyst to get to the next level. So you have to use these things as, portals to get to your, connect with your higher self. Fast from the food, alcohol, sex, and you transmutate that energy as an alchemical resource. So that's how you connect with source. So just balance all your energies out. Go out in nature, read books. So you got to have balance.
Yeah, and it's so dope too. Because the other day I was out, and I think this was like after the first or second time we spoke, but I was out and about chilling by the water and getting some sun, and it was like a river that's in the city, right? It kind of rolls through the city, but where I was located at, it's a waterfront. You can chill, and just like chop it up or whatever. But what was cool is I actually caught a dolphin coming in and out of the stream, like coming up, like in and out of, in and out of the river. And I'm like, yo, I ain't never seen a dolphin that close to, proximity of where there's a lot of activity with people, driving the boats up and down the river, etc. And I also know dolphins have an extremely powerful, like, spiritual connection to us as a people. And then I also saw on one of the videos where you were talking about, like, those people who will go deep sea fishing who are like catching mermaids and like eating them, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, can you kind of tie into the significance of how dolphins are really a part of, spirituality and connecting to, like, maybe whatever you want to go with it, but also why they were out there fishing for mermaids and mermen to eat them to kind of absorb their consciousness or whatever it was that they were doing that for?
Because these things that come from the sea are actually extraterrestrial origin. When you're talking about the Dogon tribe in Mali, see, the Dogon tribe in Mali, they had the constellations mapped out right before NASA was even created. So the Dogons, they said that they, ascended from dolphins and things of that nature. So that's when you're talking about, the activation of a certain cerebral cortex that they have. They can use almost like, I'm not sure what percentage of the brain they can use, but I think it's something like 20%. I believe, I'm not sure, but they're very smart. So that's why they don't want, want them around, pregnant women and things of that nature, because they can do a form of horizontal gene transfer, which is where you transmute a certain vibration of consciousness and you put it inside of a different vessel. So that same thing can, take place when you're talking about the activation of certain genetics. Now, when you're talking about mermaids, now that's because they contain the elixir of immortality, their genetic format. Right. So if you eat, a mermaid or whatever, they create cell growth proliferation. It gives you immortalized cell lines. Right. So that's when the cells is able to replicate themselves on an infinite level, because when you understand the genetic format of a mermaid, it is really amalgamated by the stardust of the planet. Right. So it's basically carbon. It's a part of the building block of all civilization. So they can do any type of metamorphosis as far as, like, for instance, if you look at a starfish, you take a starfish and you cut it in half, or you just chop it and kill it, another one will grow right back. The same thing can take place with a mermaid. The same thing can take place with a so-called black person's genetics if it's working in harmony with the energy of the sun and nature. Like, literally do that. They even talked about that in that the story that the lady had put about. They said that the mermaid, her arm got cut off or her hand got cut off, and it grew right back.
Yeah.
Immortalized cell lines. That's why they needed Henrietta Lacks's, her genetics and her cells in order to coat spaceships and all this other stuff, right? That's neuromelanin, that's carbon, right? So the great majority, that denotes the fact that the great majority of the mermaids are actually melanated or carbonated, right? So, but the owner who owns that sea company, he went to high school in my city. He owned it's called the Star Kiss tuna factory or something like that. It's one of those I'm talking about that make all the salmon and
that's one of the biggest damn like tuna. I think I want to say they got to be one of the biggest ones in America, if not the world, for that matter.
You know what's crazy about this though? Every Democratic president, because I live like where I live at is like the third or second biggest city in Indiana. Not that big, but I always wonder why every Democratic president came to visit my city. Like I thought that was weird. You know what I'm saying? He had meetings with the richest family in Evansville called the Chancellors, and he owns the great majority of the coal companies, and the great majority of the coal companies, they own that space. They build spaceships. It's like 45 minutes away from where I live at. They build space ships or whatever. I got pictures. I went to the property. I ain't posting them online. I ain't never talked about this online ever. So you getting free information right here just off the top. So, but they definitely where I live at is a significant place. There's a lot of abandoned buildings here, a lot of catacombs, a lot of underground tunnels. There's a multitude of things that lets me know that this city here is an import and export for trafficking and things of that nature.
Oh yeah. Now, and I'm glad you said that, because that brings me to another. Bless you. That brings me to another direction that I want to get into too, because there's certain guests that I know I can cover a lot of ground, cover a lot of space with in regards to going into some of these different topics. So I know I've shared on this show a few times, and I guess have as well. But there's a lot of different portals, a lot of different stargates. There's a lot of significant pyramidal structures, in the Americas that a lot of people aren't really privy to or just don't know of. So, for example, can you kind of share what the significance is for some of these different very powerful or very historical or ancient monuments, such as the Cahokia Mounds, or such as the St. Louis Arch, or such as, the pyramid in Tiahuashan, like all these different like structures and different places, and how they have a really significant purpose for, higher intelligence and like extraterrestrial activity.
Just like I'm glad you say that, especially St. Louis, where the Cahokia Mounds and all that, that's where the New Madrid fault line is at. That's where the black sun was at. They put that solar eclipse that took place in 2024, the last one we had, the solar eclipse of judgment. That was right there at the apex of the New Madrid fault line, where you have Bdell, Illinois, what they call Little Egypt, which is about 30 minutes away from St. Louis. Now, St. Louis is in alignment with the Big Dipper star constellation, along with other planetary alignments such as Detroit, Philadelphia, New York, Washington, D.C., Boston. But when you're talking about all these monolithic structures, they're pulling down certain kinetic energy. These are basically energy. They pull in like energy from the magnetosphere. But you have dark pockets of energy, such as like places like Stone Mountain, Georgia. That's on the 33rd parallel, right? Atlanta. Everything that was on the 33rd parallel was a powerful energy there. Then you had the same one in Dallas. Dallas is on the 33rd parallel, and that's where JFK got unalive, right? The same thing, like then when you go all the way to Baghdad, and over in Iraq, that's in alignment with the 33rd parallel, where they had all those portals. When they was talking about the activation of weapons of mass destruction, they wasn't over there for that. They was looking for portals. You see what I'm saying? So so even when you look at national parks, so national parks is also in alignment with dark ley line energy grid systems as well. So there's a lot of portals inside national parks, which is why you see a lot of people come up missing. And this is where you see a lot of Yeti or Bigfoot.
Sasquatches,
It's Sasquatch as well, because Bigfoot is actually real, because during that time period he was working with the indigenous people. Because they're not. Anytime you see a Bigfoot walking like hunched over like that, that's a fake one. That's somebody wearing a costume. Anytime you see a Bigfoot walking upright, that's a real one, because they're not savage and they're not low vibrational. They're high vibrational individuals.
Very
right?
intelligent,
Very
extremely
intelligent.
intelligent.
So that's
Yeah.
what you must know. So that's how you can tell the difference between the real one and the fake one.
Yeah, and they call them shaggies. And you know what's crazy? They are extremely powerful because they have the ability to cloak themselves or create a cloak in the wooded areas that they're in. They have the ability, like how in Black Panther, where they flew into the mountain, like when they came
Yeah.
from like the common area. Like they really do that for real, for real. That's not a game. That's real. You know what I mean? And they have the ability to do that. So, and they also have access to the inner earth, correct? Like they have the ability to go into like caverns, you know what I mean, and get into the inner earth because they vibrate on that frequency of, you know, intelligent life form and beings who have a pass into, you know, the inner earth in those realms.
And before anybody say that's not real, whatever, just understand they do understand that our governments, they have the technology to create whatever they want to create. So if you don't think extraterrestrials are real or whatever, they can create them. You know what I'm saying? We have them inside Hollow Earth and they escape. You know, they call it Nightmare Hall. You got to read the book, The Man from Planet Risk by Dr. Malachi York. He talks about Nightmare Hall. And that's to those deep underground military bunker systems. And when they come out, just like in the movie Cabin in the Woods, where was they at? They was at a national park. And that's where the simulation began. Because like I said, it's on a dark ley line. Watch the movie Cabin in the Woods.
What is it? Cavern in the Woods?
Cabin in the Woods.
Cabin in the Woods? Okay.
Yep.
I'm gonna check that out. Cabin in the Woods. Yeah,
it shows puppeteers underneath the earth, and then they looking for a sacrifice. It's kind of like the same thing that's taking place right now, which is why you're seeing so many rituals that's taking place on the surface, from the celebrity gossip to the Pope to everything that's happening in the politics to technology and the rise of artificial intelligence. Everything that's taking place on the surface, but they got all these entities and these people down below, and they bring them up to the surface to feed on humanity in a form of a sacrifice, to keep the three-dimensional world going. Yeah, you gotta watch that. It's very deep, bro.
Yeah.
It's a great movie.
I know. I got another good question because I got several that I wanted to bring up, but I'm gonna bring this one up. Laverne, shout out to Laverne Turner. She says, "Can you please give me a clear understanding why Trump is putting, or he's trying to, wants to try to put a golden dome cover over the USA? He said it's for nuclear protection, but she doesn't believe that's the only reason. I know you had did a video on this, but can you kind of tap into what that's about in regards to that golden dome that he's talking about and that Sister Laverne is talking about?"
He's really trying to block the transmission of the sun. That's all it is. He's really blocking the transmission of the sun. But he, like I said, they create everything under a Hegelian dialectic principle: problem, reaction, solution. Who's the problem? Russia, Iran, China. The reaction, let's put a golden dome over the planet. Then the solution is a diabolical solution, because once they put a dome over you, that's when they're going to implement that one world order, artificial intelligence based society. So the reason they doing that is, like I said, they trying to block out the transmission, because they know that those solar flares that harmonize with our genetic meat suit is going to put us at a certain vibration to eradicate this whole existence that they created.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, we're going. Okay, now with that, how does any of this maybe tie into the traverse and the travel path of Nibiru, and then also like the return of the 24 elders? Like, I've been hearing a lot of people talking about Nibiru. Some people I feel like are spot on. Some people I feel like I don't know what the hell they're talking about. But with that, does Nibiru and where we're at with this particular junction of the transition of the 6,000 year cycle from the Piscean to the Aquarian, and from what I've gathered in research, the path, I believe, of Nibiru to come around this part of the solar system is like every 3,600 years, if I'm not mistaken. So now, does that path, or that travel path or flight path of Nibiru and the ancients and the ancestors and all that, does that play into any sort of role in how this thing with these cycles are going to meet? Are they going to kind of cross paths? Like, how is all this kind of aligned to what your research and your studies have kind of enlightened you to?
Well, I'm gonna give an esoteric and an exoteric answer.
Okay.
So the esoteric, I'm gonna start with the hidden message. The return of Nibiru. Nibiru means Nabara. Nabara means Bara, which is a Bathari gland. The Bathari gland is activated by the hippocampus layer of the brain that takes you to a different space and time, a shift in consciousness. So now, from an esoteric standpoint, when you're talking about the return of Nibiru, when you're talking about the Pentagon and all this stuff, talking about the Anunnaki is coming, like I said, everything that they telling you that's on national television and the media or whatever is actually talking about the enhancing of your genetics. That's all it's basically talking about, right? The return of Jesus, and the return of Jesus is the return of Christ, the return of Christ consciousness. It's all everything is really just talking about DNA activation.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that'll make a lot of sense.
I mean, that's the best way, but everything, like, as far as like religion, everything is sensationalized by mythology or whatever. Everything that they're telling you in these religious systems is basically talking about certain genetics. But like I said, you do have a galactic federation. You know what I'm saying? You have a pantheon of gods. That is controlling everything outside the firmament. So.
I got you.
Now,
go ahead. No, you go ahead. What was the last thing you said?
No, I'm saying you do have a pantheon of gods. Like when you get into Gnosticism, you do have archons who control the 3-dimensional and the 4th-dimensional world, the Demiurge. And then you also have creator gods, the Elohim, the Anunnaki, who are above those individuals as well.
And there was someone who asked the question earlier. I know it's going to be too challenging to find it now in regards to where the comments are, but the question was, can you ask Bdell to kind of describe and break down the differences between the Anunnaki? Because as far as my research has brought me, I do know that there is a positive and a negative version of these Anunnaki. Now, Brother Big Chief said that those are kind of like aspects, you know what I mean, of entities versus a actual source or of a deity or entity. So is your line of thinking in the same kind of like area of what Big Chief was talking about? Do you have your own perception of how you feel like you can kind of break down the difference between the positive or negative aspects of Anunnaki?
Yeah, I have my own logical assertion on it. So when you look at it from a biblical or a mythological composition, when you're talking about the Anunnaki, so you have the ones who fell. That the ones who fell are the seeds of Enlil, right? That is 1/3 of the galaxy that went against the order of Anu. So that is also in alignment with the 200 fallen angels in the book of Enoch, the ones who fell in Mount Hermon. So those are the same ones as far as like the cherubim of the Bible, right? So the cherubim, the archons, the draconian reptilians or whatever, those are all the same factions, but you're just looking at different, tiers of, monotheism and different, mythologies that lines up to the same story. So those were the ones that fell in Mount Hermon. And, and I did a whole video talking about how they use artificial intelligence as a catalyst to where these archons is able to control the technology through humans. I broke that down too as well.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
That's all the ones. That's all you're really talking about. 1/3 of the galaxy that went against the order of Anu, and then they fell in grace. And then you had, that's what created the separatism. They fell in frequency. They fell into the demiurge. They fell into materialism, right? So then from that's when you had the creation of the black nobility, right? Because this is why I tell people all the time. This is how you know that when you understand genealogy and microbiology, you get the recessive from the dominant. You don't get the dominant from the recessive. So that means that the first Canaanites were actually black. And those black Canaanites is connected to the black nobility that is connected to the seeds of the cherubim, who is known as the draconian, archonic reptilian, shape-shifting black entities who control Europeans on the surface.
Yeah, boy. Okay. And that definitely plays a role into, what's going on, like I said, from the astrological aspects. Because even like where I'm at on the planet, like I'm a nerd when it comes to stars and studying stars and the constellation and all that. So I got telescopes and I got the apps and all that. So shout out to Brother Nkosi. He turned me on to a new one.
I got a crazy stellar. I mean, I should go get it. My son in there, he probably in there playing with. I got a big old telescope.
Listen, I make it up there to the mountain. I'm bringing mine because I know it's gonna be some sights to see. I can tell you that for sure. Yeah, man. So I'm looking at this app now. The newest one I got is called Stellarium, and it's dope, man, because you can actually, like, it's dope. You can go to different star systems and travel through the satellites and like view things. And I remember when I pulled up the first day I got it, I pulled up Earth, and I was looking at it, and it looked like they had like the shape of inner Earth like on the planet, but it was kind of like they blocked it out, like because I was scrolling around. You know what I mean?
Huh? Where was it showing at?
It was showing like I had to. You know what? I had to find it, but I'm gonna see. I'll text you a picture of it. I'm gonna text you a picture of it. But what it was is, it was. I'm looking at. I'm like, yo, ain't no continent on the surface of the planet in a shape like that. Goddamn, that shape. So I know that shape, right? So I'm just like, it's crazy to me how like you can see it, but it's still like they're trying to mask it in a way. But I know what that is. I'm like, yo, that's the inner Earth. Like that's what that is right there, and you can see it from the satellites on that app called Stellarium. And so, and I'll text it to you too. I'll text you that picture if I have to dig way down to find it. But it was dope. And so I say all that to say the ancient civilizations of Lemuria and Atlantis, right? I was just watching, I think it's called Unsolved Mysteries or something like that with William Shatner. I think it's season 6, and I don't remember what episode, but I was watching one of them and they were talking about what they thought was the entrance or like some remnants of Atlantis. But there's a lot of different theories about, you know, Atlantis and Lemuria. So from your research, from your studies, and, you know, the knowledge that you've been blessed to possess, what would you say in regards to the civilization of Atlantis? Did you feel like it really actually disappeared and it no longer exists? Or do you feel like something happened to where they just are no longer visible on the surface, but it definitely still does exist? Like, what is your take on Atlantis and Lemuria?
Now, when you talk about Atlantis, that was during that time, like, you know, they had a 5th dimensional civilization. So everything, operated by way of, you know, high density consciousness. You know, it was everything was internal to where they was able to receive abundantly on the material world, you know, on a material level. But as far as like, you know, you had these individuals, it's kind of, you ever seen the movie Greenland? This is the best way I can explain it.
You said Greenland?
Yeah, Greenland.
I don't think I've seen that one.
The same thing that's happening to our planet during that time period is what happened to the Atlanteans. So you have they have to preserve a certain race. They have to preserve a certain blood type. This is why they're going around looking for the old blood type right now. They got planes and going to different cities and stuff. They're looking for the old blood type because they understand that's extraterrestrial DNA. That's extraterrestrial DNA. They understand that. And the reason they do that, you know, this is why so many people coming up in Canada missing right now and all this other stuff. But that's a whole different story. You know what I'm saying? But as far as, you know, what took place in Greenland in the movie, it was going through a calamity. But the preserving of a certain people, they went to Greenland inside this little, it's like a doomsday type of bunker. It's like a cave system they went inside. So same thing as actually took place when we're talking about the fall of Lemuria, Mayan civilizations or whatever. Some of these people didn't disappear. You know what I'm saying? Some of them just went to the caverns of the earth and hid out. They even talk about that when you, the Anunnaki people, right? When you talk about the Hopi tribes, some of the Hopis, they inside, you know, inner earth civilizations, right? So because they already mastered the surface. It's kind of like the same thing when you're talking about the adept chambers. You go from neophyte, adept to master. Once you master, that's when you get access to, you know, the gateways of planet Earth. You got to master this realm first.
Yeah, I love that you said that too, because, you know, even going back to Mount Shasta, you know, there's a lot of people, excuse me, who go to visit Mount Shasta that have very supernatural or, you know, esoteric or astral, you know, astral. There's a lot of different elevated frequency type of experiences that people have when they go to Mount Shasta. Some people do, some people don't. So, and I know for a fact that's based upon what your vibrational frequency is and the capacity that you have to elevate, you know, to kind of synchronize with a frequency that's probably surrounding a place like Mount Shasta. So when it comes to that, this is something that I've been having conversations with on air and off air in regards to people. But, you know, even those who weren't privy to what you shared about the Black nobility, I still do feel like there's a lot of us who are focusing more on the skin color of, you know what I'm saying, people versus the level of, I would say, maybe energy or frequency or integrity of a person. How much does that matter in regards to where we are now? Are there some people who are of European descent that have the ability to elevate and ascend into, you know what I'm saying, the higher realms of consciousness? Or is there like a cap, kind of like when you drive a U-Haul as a governor that only lets you go so fast, you know, so far? Is that like kind of like what we're seeing with people who don't have access to neuromelanin? Or what's your take on when it comes to that?
Yeah, because the European, or I guess you could say the Canaanite, I wouldn't say all Europeans or whatever, but the great majority who comes from the Canaanite faction, they have eukaryotic cells. And eukaryotic cells is spliced DNA, and it's cultivated by sulfur. And sulfur, it blocks the spinal column to where the regeneration spinal fire doesn't rise up and hit the pineal gland, right? So they don't have the genetics to harmonize with nature. So they don't have internal monologue. Internal monologue is that little voice you hear in your head. Like I can say words in my head, just talk like that. They have to say it. They don't have internal monologue. That internal monologue is your inner child. That inner child is the soul. So they have a spirit. They don't have a soul. And you can tell by the hair follicle. Animals have spirits. People who have that non-ether genetical frequency, the coily hair, what they call the lamb, they just put out a coronal mass ejection, the sunspot, that coronal hole, it looked like the sign of the lamb, right? It's like it's talking about the activation of nature. So they, like I said, you have to have a certain genetic format to activate those genetics.
Yeah, that's
but
deep.
that doesn't necessarily mean that you come from the cursed bloodline. You got some Europeans that come from the Pleiadian faction, right?
Yeah,
you talk about when you go into Norse mythology, the Nordics or whatever, some of them individuals were high vibrational. They're not connected to that same seed.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot, as far as like the cultivation of racism, imperialism, colonization, the system that they built that's based on economic disenfranchisement, all these things that's, that afflicted the planet, that's most likely coming from the faction of that Canaanite.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, the first Canaanite was black. Like I said, you had to have the, genetics, and it's kind of like the same, the Yaqub story. Right?
Shout out to somebody in the somebody in the comments mentioned that. They brought that up too.
Remember, he said, what did he say to his brother Yushak? It's basically the same as the Enki and Enlil story. Mm-hmm. He said, I will create a people that's going to rule over you for 6,000 years. Mm-hmm. That 6,000 years is over. Mm-hmm. This is why you're seeing everything changing. Yeah. Because the bloodline he created, that European he created, them blackamoors he created that gave the edification to the European, their time is running out. It's over.
Oh, yeah.
So then the best way to understand the difference between a black nobility, blackamoor, the ones that, that chose the side of, hedonistic culture and the corporation, those are the ones that's in your religion, your pastor, your preachers, the ones that's in Freemasonry, in Luciferianism, the ones that's, gatekeepers of the movie industry, music industry. That's how you can tell the energy. Those that's connected to the planet, we're trying to get away from the corporation. The ones who want to, keep the corporation going, that's how you know who's a part of the seeds of Enlil in terms of energy and mindset.
Yes, sir. And I've seen like videos of, I'm assuming that it's a version of Enki and of Enlil, and I'm very confident the videos that I've seen. But one of them looks like a brother who's like of Middle Eastern descent, and he has on like a white hair wrap, and he has the beard, and he kind of looks like Middle Eastern. And then there's another one who I've been seeing, and he's a brother like about my complexion. He got a beard too, and then he wears like a white cap, and I think he has like gold on the white suit that I see him in. Are those any like type of connections or correlations to Enki and Enlil in a modern day, I guess modern day time, or is that like something else that I'm seeing when I see like these people who are surfacing on the internet?
The guy that you seeing that they talking about in real time is a black guy named King Yahweh. Okay. So, but that's not the real Yahweh, because Yahweh, when you get into the Tetragrammaton, it means agreeable and disagreeable. So he is Enlil. So Yahweh, Enlil, Yaldabaoth, that's the same person. So he's not an artist. So he's just a regular individual. I would say regular because I think he's like a prince or something or whatever. But as far as like him controlling certain factions, as far as like governments and controlling Europeans or whatever, I don't think that's I think people are getting too caught up into the mythology with that. But as far as like the Maitreya, I think that was a real instance that took place. They talking about the Maitreya who came to I think he came to the Congo. And he said that he stood about 7 feet tall, and he had like healing and supernatural powers. And then they said when he was walking away, he just vanished in thin air. And he said he was back. Yeah, so that can be because the Maitreya, I think it was in certain forms of ancient Proto-Semitic language, Maitreya translates to Enlil. So that could
So
be,
now,
go ahead.
go ahead. My bad. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
But yeah, so that can be, so because Maitreya, like Enlil, that's pretty much when you break down the linguistics of the word and you get into the etymon and all that, his name translates to Enlil. Yeah.
Now, is this the one that looks Middle Eastern, or is that the one that's more melanin?
He the one that looks Middle Eastern with the beard.
Right. Now with Enlil, so Enlil is like but he's the representation of the disagreeable Anunnaki. Is that correct?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Right. So what would be the purpose of him making an appearance and like coming back? Like, what would you think would be the reason for that? Because I saw that footage.
I don't know. Some say that the great it's certain tribes in Africa that's a part of that bloodline. That's why you see the great majority of those cardinals. I don't know where most of them come from in the Vatican, in the first Black nobility Vatican popes of Rome. The great majority of them were African. They never, it's like I said, none of them was never American. Right. You got your first so-called American pope who's actually Black. I mean, I mean, when you look at his maternal family, but like I said, just because I can't identify as a rabbit, and I ain't no damn rabbit, you know what I'm saying? But we already know what time it is. They just trying to scramble up the mythology because they don't want people to know that Black nobility is running the church, the Vatican. Because it started with a melanated pope, and it has to end with a melanated pope.
Yeah. Wow.
He's a Black passing as white type of European, I guess.
Oh yeah. It's so funny though, because that's something that definitely has been talked about, thoroughly, on this channel, definitely on yours as well, in regards to that happening. But it's funny, I thought it was cute the way they kind of slipped him in there versus just putting a straight up brother in there. But I guess
all trick knowledge. That's all it was. Yeah. And even when you look at that, I even proved that there's another Pope Leo XIV. That's what they do to throw you off. They make two of everything. Just like you have a so-called Black Adolf Hitler, then you have a Europeanized one too. But the Black one controls the European. That's where they get the edification from. I showed a art piece. It shows the Blackamoors. They was all in circle, in cipher, triangulating. And then it shows the Europeans riding on the goat. Because when you ride on the goat, to go out and triangulate, that means to go out and cause chaos and mischief. That's what they use the European for. They're the ones who coached them, right? So that's why I said you got two different bloodlines on this planet.
Yeah, that's facts. Yeah, and because it's all kind of like to keep the veil, over our eyes, pretty much. Like they don't want us to wake up to seeing what's really happening. But at the end of the day, you can't stop it. Like it's kind of like COVID. Like it's spreading too far. Consciousness is spreading too far. The frequencies are spreading too far. That damn Golden Globe thing ain't gonna happen. I don't know what that's about, but whatever. So it's just like it ain't gonna stop what the Creator's doing. You know what I mean? Like, so we're gonna rise and we're gonna continue to elevate by any means necessary, and ain't nothing they can do to stop it. We're here now. So with that, I know we're running close on time. With everything that we covered, and we covered a whole lot, and it's pretty dope. I love it. With all that we've covered, though, where would you say, based upon, I know you got a lot, probably you're gonna bring out the vote next week for the Bdell 1014 channel, and then social media as well. But where would you say we are right now in regards to this current existence, as well as what we can expect between maybe some of the calamities or maybe some of the catastrophes, or if we just see, some sort of like magnificent, display of transformation, immediately for us to kind of see the shift of the planet going from the dark lunar cycle into the bright solar cycle, which we're heading right now with the Aquarian age.
Well, we will indeed see more calamity as it's a part of the process. The planet is going through a birthing process. Mother Nature has got to go through those 9 cycles. Just like when a woman gives birth, the planet is doing the same thing. But that rebirth in itself is a form of destruction. It's a beautiful destruction. And it's a beautiful destruction because that means that the matriarch is coming back. So some people think like just because they have calamity, you losing your house and your job and stuff like that, these are all emotional attachments that's connected to the energy of the moon. So the fall of the material world is basically moonfall. So it's one of those things where you just got to let it play out. just let it play out and then start from the ground up, right? So like I said, it's a shifting process. Everything has to go through reset. It's inevitable that something has to happen. There's always a shift in consciousness. There's always a shifting cycles that takes place every 80 years. And those 80 years is connected to the cosmic clock. And then you got the doomsday clock is almost at 12. It's almost, it's almost at 0. I mean, so it's one of those.
No, go ahead.
No, we're due for a certain calamity. We don't know when it's going to happen. They say that the volcano is going to erupt on June 5th. So they say, but these are all codexes though. I don't really take what they say for face value as far as like time or whatever, but a lot of these things is actually going to be taking place in the future. So we got to be prepared for it.
Oh yeah.
But they look at it as like a loss. It's not a loss. You should want this corporate infrastructure to fall and be destroyed. I want it to.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because I understand the big picture of it. You know what I'm saying? Give a damn about, my house and my car got flooded, but you see what's going on. The restoration process has to happen by way of the activation of nature. It has to happen. People talking about they want the system to reset, but do they really want it to reset?
Right.
Are they really with that? They care about losing their house, their cars, and all this other stuff, and sinkholes and all that. They talking about a raise in consciousness. That's what happened. The more we raise up in consciousness, the more the more the planet is going to vibrate in frequency. Oh yeah. So that means that the more that we get this knowledge, the more that we're going to create these calamities. But like I said, it can, it's a dualistic paradox we living in too. We don't know if it's being engineered by them or if it's being engineered by our consciousness that's connected to nature. A thing to look at. But we asked for it, so we can't be mad when certain things happen. We can't be scared. I'm not scared.
Not at all. Me either. Nah, because this is the physical body, man.
It's all part of the program.
Yeah. It's funny because I share with people when it comes to this thing called life, I look at it if you look at this current and present existence, I look at it when we come into this physical body, this meat suit, whatever you want to call it, this temporary tomb, whatever you want to call it, it's only for just that, a temporary amount of time. It's like when you get a rental car. When you get that rental car, you pull off the lot. Yeah, you stunting with it during that time that you got under that agreement, but you got to return that thing at some point in time. That's the same thing as this body. So for me, I feel like I've done enough shadow work and spiritual work and tapping in work and all that to where I'm comfortable with my spiritual self or my spirit body, my work body, because I know I've been able to really manipulate and use that in this physical form. So therefore, at the end of the day, when we go to sleep, that's a form of almost like death. The body is unconscious, for the most part, we're breathing, but we're not like we are right now. And therefore, when we actually transition, it's not going to be much more different, of a process than us going to sleep. We'll kind of tap back into that spiritual aspects of ourselves and continue to do the work in another dimension. So right now, I think most people would say that we're in a third dimension reality, right? Would you agree with that?
We're in the third dimension, but we're breaking out of it.
So where do we go next? Do we go to the fourth or do we go to the fifth?
We're in the fourth right now. So the reason I said we're in the fourth because we're breaking out of the Demiurge. Because the Demiurge is comprised of the fourth dimension and the lower third dimension. So once you get out of the fourth dimension, that's when you get to the apex of the galactic center that ties you right back into the true spiritual sun, Polaris.
Yeah, that's deep. Now, our actual sun that we have now, which is throwing the solar flares, there's also black holes, or there's holes in that sun to where I've seen where there are portals or gateways to where there are crafts and beings coming in and out of our actual sun, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a portal, and those coronal holes, they contain magnetic filaments, so it's a form of an enhancement of electrical conduction. So those quasi-electrical energies that's coming to the planet is giving a electrical vibration to planet Earth to electrify the masses. That's what that's all about. So the same thing, it is a portal of consciousness too. That's what the sun is. It's really a portal of consciousness to get outside, this Metatronic overlay. And then you got the moon. The moon is a portal for reincarnation. That's all it is. Because everything is connected to the moon, like your veneration for food, sex, movies, anything that's connected to external stimulation, that is connected to the energy of the moon. So that's why I said if you have an emotional connected to everything on this planet, your essence is going to come in that perpetual state of reincarnation through the moon, through Saturn, coming right back.
Now, do you see, because the moon that's there now is not actually the original moon that's, I guess, supposed to be in alignment with this planet, right? That was brought here by, was it the Draconian beings that pulled that moon into this solar system, or do you know who's responsible for pulling that moon over here where it's at now?
It's I call them archons, and archons are known as draconians. So also in Japanese folklore, they say that the dragon towed the moon into our solar system. And then even when you get into Zulu mythology, talking about Credo Mutwa, he said that there was no moon in our solar system at one point in time. And it wasn't no sun either, it was gray skies. That was, that's according to their mythology. He also talks about the Chitahari, the Draconian reptilian, bringing the moon into our solar system, because the moon is a form of control humans on a planet by way of energy, frequency, and vibration. And once they cultivate that vibration, they can control you by way of your mindset that's connected to the simulation.
That's deep, because that goes back to, like, for those who are on the call, and I know some tribe members who either are on the call or that know somebody who works in the medical field, that would then speak to why you see there's a spike in, like, violence or aggression and all these different types of energies in the emergency rooms or in hospitals during full moons. Does that have, like, an effect of what we're talking about now? How significant is the influence of the moon over people's behavior and energies?
Well, the moon is an artificial celestial megastructure that is creating the silver cord that controls the parasites. So when you see the enhancement in the moon at full spectrum, when it's at full moon spectrum, what happens is it activates those parasites. So this is where you get a lot of calamity, a lot of, murders and all this stuff, or whatever, hospitals, police activity, crime activity going on. You're talking about the enhancement of parasites, because parasites, they replicate themselves on an infinite level based on the energy of the moon, because it creates an energy of chaos. So see, the parasites is really talking about the extraterrestrial invasion, because the archons, they created the parasite that's connected to the simulation to control the humans on planet Earth. That's how they control you, with the parasites. It's kind of like a tracking system, right? That's what a parasite is. It's a tracking system to control humans on the planet, to carry out certain agendas that's connected to the binary code system of the simulation. So that's why when you get into gematria, everything operates on a numerical cycle that's connected to the binary code system, that's connected to the energy of the moon. Because when you look at the zeros and ones of, binary code or whatever, the 0 represents dark matter energy and the 1 represents a photon. And when you amalgamate both of them together, that creates physical reality. And the physical reality is being controlled by archons who created parasites within the genetically modified foods. And you got parasites in everything on this planet. So everything is infiltrated to control humans to carry out certain agendas. That's all it is.
And shout out to D. Ross. They said that's why you're supposed to do a parasite cleanse starting 2 days before the full moon.
Yeah,
that's deep.
Everything is connected. So that's why I say, like, because you also got psychotronic nanotechnology in the food, and it's in the water. It's like you can barely even see it. It's like and you ever heard of a plank?
Yeah.
A plank is like the smallest unit in the universe. It's like it's a microcosmic aspect of a subatomic particle.
Is it smaller than a neutrino? Because I know neutrinos are very small too.
Yeah, neutrinos is what you see when you sneeze. When you sneeze and you see those particles, neutrinos.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, because
I knew it was small.
Because when you sneeze, your heart stops. That's the closest thing you get to death. So you're really in it when you sneeze. A real hard sneeze, you're really in the in between.
Wow, never knew that. Hey, learn something new every day. That's deep. Okay, excuse me. We got a lot of comments in the chat, but I know how much longer you got, bro? Because that'll let me know how many more.
My son, he in there playing, so I can.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, that's what's up. So now with that, man, I'm trying to figure out where I'm gonna go. Let me get a couple of the tribes questions real quick before I go into mine. So Here's one right here. Shout out to Nkosi. He says, how do you cleanse yourself to get rid of these parasites?
Somebody say you can do like a duck flower. I don't know. I've never taken that. You know, they said it's really good for, you know, to cleanse the gut and, you know, things of that nature. It's going to make you throw up. And I don't know. I'm not going to recommend that to anybody or whatever, but it's all on you if you want to do that. Or you can do like chlorophyll, magnesium supplements and stuff like that. You can go to Dr. Yaki's. He got a lot of supplements that can help you with cleansing the body or whatever. But like anything that contains like a metal extraction, because parasites, they have the ability to hide themselves in the metals in your body. So you want to do a metal cleanse.
Oh, hold on. I saw one, but it moved. They're going so fast. This is one, Nkosi. You're welcome, brother. I definitely see about here goes some more too. I'll add those to the screen as well. But in regards to the let me see, what did we not hit? Because there's a couple of different things I wanted to hit. I didn't know if I was gonna have time for, so let me check out my notes. But when it comes to like extraterrestrial visitations, right? I had one I did last Saturday about that, and I shared the Gulf Breeze craft that landed in like 1987 in Gulf Breeze, Florida. And then like what was nuts about it, the very next day, I'm not sure who runs the 9 Ether channel on Instagram, but that's a dope page that I follow too. But they shared the very next day, they shared the video footage of the photographer who caught the picture of that craft. And I'm like, yo, this is nuts, because I had never seen the video footage of the craft, but I always seen the picture like from Dr. York's books or just online, what have you. And so when I saw the video, I'm like, yo, that's dope. Like the timing of it was crazy, being that I just did a live the night before and then I seen that the next day. I'm like, I don't feel like that's a coincidence. But I personally seen a lot of different crafts coming in and out of the atmosphere, and I was able to record, I think 2 of them I have on video, and then I've got some pictures of a few more. Have you ever personally had any experiences with any extraterrestrial crafts, or have you ever seen any crafts, you know, in real time before?
No, I've had just supernatural experiences, but I've never had a experience with a craft. But there's this thing called the vector codes. Vector codes, they can give you 9th dimensional knowledge to where you're able to control crafts with your brain capacity. That goes into ancient Taoism, and I ain't talked about that yet, but I don't want to,
I got you. Yeah, we can save it. Listen, because I do know that the Dr. Stephen Greer, I believe is his name. He has this thing where they do the I forgot what they call it, but like he gets a group of people together, like on a beach or somewhere out in nature, and they all get together and they kind of like meditate together to try to kind of invoke or try to connect or communicate with extraterrestrial crafts. And they have, I think they showed a few where they did kind of have some contact or what have you. But in regards to the crafts that are coming in and out of the planets, like some of the ones you've seen and shared on your channel, who do you feel like these beings are, and why do you feel like they're coming here now, where we're seeing so much of the footage that's being captured and shared around the planet in regards to extraterrestrial activity?
See, the great majority of them actually come from the ocean. There's a book that you got to read. Well, I'm pretty sure you already read it before. This is kind of like Conspiracy 101, Behold a Pale Horse.
Yeah.
The naval intelligence officer, he said that he's seen spacecrafts coming from the ocean. He said he never seen them coming from the sky. And then there's a woman who lived in Southern Illinois, a black woman in the 1920s. She's seen a spaceship come from her lake. So they have the ability to travel, but the great majority of them that's controlling those crafts or whatever are grays. And the reason that they're grays is because grays don't have a certain genetic format to replicate themselves on an infinite level when you're talking about being able to procreate, because they don't have any type of biological functions. They don't have, they can't reproduce. So they come to the planet to abduct people. So this goes into the Majestic 12. The Majestic 12 is basically amalgamated with, insectoids, draconians, and the Zeta Reticula grays. And they use everything in it's like a harvesting planet. That's what the Demiurge is all about. The Demiurge is really coming to the planet to suck up microscopic waves of energy to control humans and basically put them in a state of trafficking and things of that nature. That's why, how do, 800,000 kids come up missing every year, on time, every time? That's because it's being done at the highest level of government. and those governments is in connection with these extraterrestrial entities for trafficking. That's why this is all Canaanite worship. What you had to do in order to get, riches and stuff in the Canaanite culture, you had to sacrifice somebody to the god of Moloch, right? And the god of Moloch is Baal, and Baal is Enlil, who is Yodabal, the same person. Yeah, you see, it all ties all the way back together, bro.
Yeah, listen. It do. And listen, well, I'm gonna get his brother. I'm gonna ask his brother his question because he sent love, saying, shout out to DJ, always supporting Brother Bdell, Illuminati. I'm on to you. Question is, young Pharaoh, Rashad, Jamal down for COINTELPRO in your opinion? I know these forces always working against the chosen. What's your take?
Salute to them two brothers. You know what I'm saying? They, they're going through, detrimental situations or whatever. I spoke to young Pharaoh probably, maybe about 3 months ago. And he's trying to revitalize his situation. I don't know what he got going on now. And, as far as, when it comes to young Pharaoh, I can say probably, I would say more than likely, because not only was he propagating, high frequency knowledge, but at the same time, he was propagating a form of masculinity. He was a real rebel. So I think, a lot of times the infiltration, process takes place when you start, connecting yourself to, politics and stuff. So once you start rubbing shoulders with those people, a lot of times, that's when you see people take a downfall. But as far as like Rashad Jamal, I don't know, I don't really know the ins and outs of his situation or what really happened. So, but, more power to them brothers. Hope they get it right.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of different stuff. I really don't get too deep into, too much that has to do with other people, only because, you and I spoke about it off air before. But and so when it comes to the rise of consciousness and it comes to where we are right now, I wasn't gonna go here, but I did see some people bring it up. I saw some people bring it up in the comments, man. So we saw, those of us who follow your channel, we saw a very interesting conversation the other night, man. Like I said, I wasn't going to go there, but I saw them, bring it up, and then, we got a little bit more time. So do you want to kind of share a little bit about the conversation that you had a couple nights ago with the brother 607?
Well, we had a conversation when we was going to tackle, the metaphysical principles about the Demiurge, but, it's one of those things where when you're operating from a high vibrational frequency, a lot of times your energy is going to disrupt other people's energy. Because like I said, you become a mirror to other individuals. So what was lacking in him, he's seen in me. So it kind of reversed the polarity of the situation, and it created resistance all throughout the whole dialogue. So like I said, this is why I said it's imperative before you get into spirituality, you got to heal first. You cannot just jump into esoteric knowledge and spirituality and think that, you have the ability to, demonstrate knowledge to, different demographics of people. You got to master your emotions before you tackle, other factors of knowledge, right? Because otherwise you're going to weaponize the spirituality. You're going to weaponize it for money. You're going to weaponize it to control people. You're going to weaponize it, for your own benefit. So that's why I said you cannot just jump to esoteric knowledge and spirituality and conspiracy and skip the healing, because it's going to create spiritual psychosis, right? This is why you got so many people in the conscious community, they dealing with a lot of mental illness and mental psychosis because they're not dealing with the healing first. You got to heal first, because otherwise you're going to become over emotional. You're going to be energetically out of balance, painting your fingernails, acting like a woman, all this other stuff. Because like I said, this system is, they use this system to create a chaotic energy, right? Planet Earth is an insane asylum. So that's why I said you got to be balanced mentally, physically, spiritually, and vibrationally in order to, vibrate at your higher self. That's why I said it's one of those things where you got to be, especially with the so-called black man in America right now, you got to master your emotions.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because, from my perspective, I feel like at this point that anti-intellectualism is an attack on masculinity. They don't want black men to be intelligent. They want to keep everything dumbed down. They want you to say stuff and don't want to, explain where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? And that's what I do with my information. I tell you something, I'm not going to just say that you can make up something that, oh, there's a portal in Antarctica. Okay, yeah, but why is there a portal? And who put it there? And what's the reason behind it?
Right.
So that's what I get into. You can't just tell people stuff nowadays. Everything has to be demonstrated. Everything has to be, you know, based on factual evidence, because you just get on these cameras and you just start saying stuff, you know, and then all these people believing you, leading these people, you know, astray from the real knowledge.
Yeah.
People, you got to understand what these words mean. You got to use, you know, certain linguistics and certain words that, you know, to get the edification across.
Right.
You know, so that's what it's all about, man.
And I agree too, and it's funny because shout out to Sister Layla Hampton L. She was like, I was so proud of Bdell's emotional intelligence. It's funny because that's the first thing I texted you, if I'm not mistaken. Like after I saw it, I'm like, yeah, I was like, bro, I said exactly what she said. I was like, because I know when you're in those situations, that can really go left depending on who is able to control their emotions, right? And so that's one of the things that I speak about with the brothers that I mentor or that, you know, I coach up is like energy. When you talk about emotional intelligence, if you break down the word emotion phonetically, you know, to me, I look at it as energy in motion. You know what I mean? So if that energy, if you let your energy get away and it start to go into motion, that thing can turn into a snowball effect real quick. Right. And I know personally because I used to struggle with that. And sometimes I still do. But for the most part, I've gotten a lot better handle on it. And I'm grateful for that because that's where it allows me to be in control of myself. And then I can then be in control of that situation by not letting that other person's energy take control over me. And one of the things I do my best to teach, especially the young kings, is like, nobody can take your power from you. Right. You can give your power away, but nobody, I don't care how powerful they are, they don't have the power to take your power from you. Because then, you know, that's them taking your ashe, or they taking, you know, your energy, or taking, you know, whatever you are as regards to your spiritual or physical makeup. You can't let anyone take that from you. You can only give it to them. And so when in that situation, I was proud of bro too, because he sat there and held it down and didn't fold into that same, you know, little energy tantrum or rant. You know what I mean? So it was a dope display of emotional intelligence, because we have to see a lot more of that, because unfortunately our youth are being led by that kind of energy, the energy that you're talking about. So,
and like I said, in over emotionalism, like in ourselves, you know, that's, you know, a form of emasculation. You know what I'm saying? Acting impulsive. You got to be in control of your emotions as a man. If you want people to trust your information, you're going to just say anything that come out your head, whatever feels good or whatever, you know, the situation at the time. You have to master yourself. You got to think before you speak, right? But like I said, that's why within the show, if you pay attention, it showed he went through a trauma stage, because it reminded him of who he actually was when he was a child. So, you know, he was connected to that trauma to where he wasn't able to articulate himself. And when he heard me speak, he was kind of like, well, this is like a wound, because this is where I want to be in life. And as far as like on a knowledgeable level, that's where I want to be, but I don't have the ability to demonstrate that. So my only rebuttal for that is to hate that. You know what I'm saying? People gonna hate anything that they can't become. You know what I'm saying? So but like I said, it wasn't his destiny. That wasn't his, you know, his autonomy to have access to those key codes and that information. Because like I said, in order to get to that level, you got to heal first. Yeah. You got to heal. That's when you unlock certain parts of yourself, other gateways. Yes, and he's talking about the Demiurge. The Demiurge is the ego. He's the ego. His ego couldn't get past of me, you know, talking above his level, right? Yeah. So, you know, so we got to master, you know what I'm saying, like you master your emotions. That's what it's all about. Master your emotions. Or the Demiurge is going to control you.
Yeah, and I want to jump on this one. Shout out to Aaron Ishola. That's facts, because he or she says, yeah, because there's even fake and wicked Babalawos that need that too. And that's real, unfortunately. But, you know, I say this is like in every demographic, every environment, every, you know, situation, you're always going to have people who doing the right work and the wrong work. You're going to have people who does the light work and the dark work. Like, it's just, that's the sides of the polarity. So I'm not going to sit here and say all cops are bad, even though the climate does show otherwise. I know for a fact, off of my experiences, there's been times when some cops looked out for me, you know what I'm saying, based upon the situation, you know what I mean? But there's been times when someone was some assholes that roughed me up too for no reason that I ain't even gonna say what I wanted to do. So it's like, so that's the thing about the reality of where we're living. Like, there is phenomenal Babalawos and Yanifas out there, but unfortunately there's some who's not doing good business. So I share that to say that we have to be very conscientious and cognizant of our past and who we're allowing to steer the ship, the boat, the plane, the car within our path and our journey. You have to really be able to tap into your inner godness, your child of godness, your inner self, your higher self, all those things that we feel intuitively, spiritually. Like, you got to really be able to tap in and like bring that to the forefront, so you're letting your intuition guide you to whoever is the right person for you versus going for whoever's in front of you and you just going for whatever is there and available. Be patient and then let it happen and unfold in divine time, because that's the one thing I've seen in my own path, is that you're going to have people that's going to fall off, bless you, throughout your journey. You're going to have people that's going to come across who's going to cross your path. Like, we ain't even known each other a week yet and we made it happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, this happened. And it's like, it's dope because I see the alignment. There was somebody in the comments after, I don't know what episode, but they're like, yo, you should have Brother Bdell on there. I'm like, yo, if you know how to connect us, like, let me know. It'll be dope. And just as the universe would have it, a few days later, it happened. So it's like, that's the same thing with our spiritual journeys too. So I get what you're saying, but you just got to be conscientious of who and what you're dealing with and do your research, and check out, who it is that you're working with, so you don't get stuck by one of us who's not doing good business.
Right.
Yeah, that's deep. And then also with the shout out to Jupiter's Light, what she's saying is real too. I just had a conversation about this recently, because one of the things I've seen in the Ifa or Orisha spiritual tradition is like people who get initiated. I've been a part of a lot of different ones in regards to working for, the team to put that together. And one of the things that I've seen now, I think 4.5 years in my journey, is that we do need to heal first. The way I kind of work with the people who I'm a spiritual advisor or counselor, or whatever you want to call it, therapist, whatever you want to call it, whatever that role is, I always share people like, work on you, work on your journey, initiate yourself every day into your faith and your personal priesthood, because we all should be doing that regardless of what spiritual tradition that we follow, regardless of what we call the creator or whatever that is. We all should still be working towards elevating or getting better every single day, regardless of, what that's about in regards to your spiritual journey. But at the same time, like, the healing is the most significant part, because if you go through these ceremonies and these rituals into what we call a quote unquote initiation to some sort of priesthood, you're going to bring in a lot of elevated energy, and the energy is going to elevate on both sides, on the positive side and the light side, and on the dark side, because every time you elevate, what they say, new levels, new devils. That doesn't change in spirituality. It happens in all forms of life. When you got to where you are with your channel, I know you got a new plethora of trolls and haters and, people who throwing shade. That's part of the process. The children
there's a video. There's like, I got probably about like over 1,000 fake Facebook accounts, and people think it's me, and I'm messaging them to get money and stuff like that. Like, y'all know I don't talk like that. Like, it just sometimes, what I'm saying, spiritual discernment, what I'm saying, you just gotta, use common sense, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I got my hands full. I don't have time to pay attention to other people and try to get money off them or scam them or whatever. And bro, I'm a full-time dad, and I got my girl, and I got my own stuff I gotta deal with as far as like trying to write my book. I ain't got time to be worried about other people.
I know that's.
I have no time. All my time is putting all my time back into myself.
Facts. Big
facts.
Yeah, that's deep. Now, before we get ready to go, a couple more. Let me see if there's any more questions in here. Balance. I'm glad somebody mentioned that about balance. It's not, I don't know if they put a question before, but I'm gonna bring it up. When you talked about balance, you were saying about how in order for us to kind of elevate as a person, we got to have that balance of masculine and feminine principle. Can you kind of share like what some of those regards are? Because I know when it comes to like studying and wisdom and knowledge, this and that, like they say people who know how to use both sides of their brains are usually, further when it comes to like intelligence, because you're able to activate both the left and the right hemispheres, of the brain. Can you kind of share how the balance of that comes into elevation, the elevation of the consciousness, or leveling up, as what we talk about?
All right, being able to balance, you have to compartmentalize certain energies. So like I said, too much of anything is bad for you. So like I said, if you work out more than you read, you're still out of shape. So you got to balance those energies out. Balance out the physical and the spiritual. That's what makes you a master. 360 degrees of the physical, 360 degrees of the spiritual. You combine them together, that's 720 degrees of knowledge. That's when you tap into the apex of Christ consciousness. It happens by way of balance. The balance of the left hemisphere of the brain and the right hemisphere of the brain. Because it activates magnetites and dendrites that creates more neurons. And those neurons ties the brain together to where you become whole. You cannot be holy until you become a whole brain thinker. They understand that in the esoterics. So that's what I'm saying. Like, that's the only way you could become a God. Balance is God. That's the God frequency. Gamma radiation, right? So you got to be balancing your energies in order to tap into that, that metaphysical state.
That's what's up. Yeah, I love it, man. So I know we definitely went in and we went hard, man. Anything you want to share with the people in regards to like what you got going on and what you got coming up in the very near future before we get out of here?
Well, I got something going on with Yaki in Stone Mountain, Georgia, in Atlanta on June 28th. And then I believe I'm going to be at the Knowledge Fest in August, sometime in August or whatever. And I'm still debating on the Quantum Fest. I'm supposed to be going to the Quantum Fest in Houston, Texas. So I don't know if I'm going to that. So those are the all four of the things that I got on my agenda. I'm also working on a book right now, and it's going to be based on, healing, the black sheep of the family, chosen ones. It's going to be based on mind science technology, and I'm going to break it down from a historical perspective as well. That's pretty much all I'm doing right now. Just, write my book and preparing for all these, these other outlets and trips and whatever.
I love it. Yeah, I look forward to, crossing paths with you, man, and chopping it up in person in the near future for sure. And also, one of the other things that I love how you break down, and I'm not very familiar with it, but based off of what I've heard from you, the way you share and speak about it, to me, in my mind, I'm thinking it kind of ties into like the tools I use in regards to divination. But can you kind of speak about this thing called gematria and like how gematria is a way that you can kind of, get clarity or get insight on different things by breaking it down numerically?
Yeah. First of all, we have to understand that everything in the simulation is numerical, right? So since everything in the simulation is numerical, that means that that numerical component is connected to a gematria body. Your physical vessel in itself is what we call the gematria body. But in order to escape it, that's when you tap into the Zohar, which is your higher self that's connected to source. So the gematria body is tether connected to everything in the simulation. So that's why when you look up certain words or certain events that took place in the gematria calendar, they line up with other things that took place within that dimensional reality or whatever time period or whatever era. So if I look up, the gematria for the New York Knicks versus Pacers or whatever, it's going to be a numerical sequence that's in alignment with that event. So that's how you know that everything they do is based on numerical cycles. You can predict what's going to happen just by way of the gematria.
Yeah, that's definitely I like that because
it's the binary code. That's how you hack the matrix system.
Yeah,
you understand the gematria calendar. Just like all right, for instance, best way I can explain it, like when you had that event that took place in 2001 with the buildings or whatever, the first building hit and it fell at 1028. 1028 is the 128 code. The 128 code is the 911 code, and the 911 code is the code to get back to the galactic center, because those two buildings was a representation of the tuning forks that connects you right back to the galactic center of Jack and Boaz and Freemasonry. So the 9 is what represents the galactic center when you're going all the way back, and then the 128 code is connected to the bridge. That's how you can tell what's going to happen next. That's how I be, catching them. I'm just by way of the cycles and looking at what happened, when the sun was at solar maximum. You see, that's the thing though. This is why it's imperative to understand, like, when it comes to, getting stuck in religion, some people don't even get into the esoteric knowledge because they stuck in the Islam. They stuck into the religion, because if you want to get to the truth, you can't just be one-dimensional with the knowledge. Because just in the Hebrew doctrine, they talk about how they don't want you to read no other manuscript except the Bible, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what about all these other books? They got all this other knowledge that's telling you about what's going to be taking place as far as like calamity and stuff. You got to be a step ahead of the game. You can't just be so confined. But that's what the religion is for. This is why we can't get to the truth. People are boxed in by their ideologies.
Yeah. Yeah, and that goes back to even like one of the things that I want to have a good deep dive in on is like the separation, like this whole this whole separation thing that we see. Religion is already doing that alone, but a couple of shows ago we had a bunch of people going back and forth about whether humanity began in Africa or it began in America, and it was crazy because at the end of the day, I share with you how I feel about it. My thing is this: it's like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me because I'm looking at it as if, okay, let's just say if Mother Africa is our mother and America is our father, or if America is our mother and Africa is our father. Either way it goes, our people have traversed this whole entire planet. And if we're going to sit here and argue over something small like that, I don't even think we like really at the level where we are positioning ourselves to take the oppressor's foot off of our neck, because we fighting over dumb shit when we ought to be learning how we can elevate, form, coagulate together. United we stand, divided we fall, so we can figure out what we got to do to get rid of, that oppression. And I think that's where we got to really do the deep diving and the healing in regards to who and what we are, instead of judging, and passing judgment and shaming and talking down on folks. Like, lift them up, lift your fellow brother up, lift your fellow sister up. Like, nah, we don't need to be tearing them down. Like, when I saw your page, I'm like, yo, bro, it's dope. And I tapped in because I'm not intimidated by your success. If anything, I love it because I told you off here, like, bro, I love your work. That's dope, man. Keep doing what you're doing because the people need that, But then you have gatekeepers and guardians of information that don't want to give people access because they don't want to see that person get further along or higher than them. And I feel like those are the ones we got to really keep an eye on.
What's crazy about that though? Because one thing people fail to understand as far as like conscious leaders, you can't put yourself on a pedestal so high to where other people can't touch you. Because some people, when they get to a certain level, they act like they can't be touched. You're supposed to stay connected to the people, because the people is the ones who vilified your message in the first place. And that's how you galvanize, sustainable, communities and things of that nature. You got to stay connected to the people. You don't see, this is another thing I don't like. People, they want the knowledge and weaponize it to create a European lifestyle, right? You're supposed to stay connected to the people. You can't forget what you was doing it for. So that, like I said, this is why it's imperative to heal, because this is where you begin to get people like Nature Boy, right? Weaponizing the spirituality for sexual, pleasantries and for the money and things of that nature, because he hasn't faced his demons, right? He was overly sexualized, taking people's money and things of that nature. So that's what happens when you're not healed. When you're not healed, those are the catalyst that follows up whenever you have the ability to become a leader and things of that nature. That's what happens.
And I never heard of that. Who is that person? You said Nature Boy? Who is that?
Yeah, this guy named Nature Boy. He had this thing called Carbonation, and it was like a coalition of, he had different women and different men, and he basically, created, ideologies and mindsets to make them subservient to him and worship him. And he weaponized, it's pretty obvious that something happened to him when he was younger.
It sounds like a cult.
Yeah, it was a cult. So that's how cults are, formed. Yep. They get this information from unhealed people that's pulling in other unhealed people.
Yep.
Hurt people.
Yes, sir. Right? That's facts.
So that's why I'm saying you got to heal first. This is why a lot of people be like, oh, well, I resonate with 607 Unc's message because we both come from the streets. No, the thing is to heal, to get away from the street mentality, not to vilify it. I don't care about what you're saying. If you're not healed, it's coming from a dark place.
Yes. Yeah.
Everything you're going to do is dark. It's going to come with an agenda. This is why you can dangle a bag of money in front of somebody's face and be like, hey, go push the Republican Party. Yep. Can't do that with me. That's why those do it. And then I say, you can't do that with me because I come from a balanced household. I had my mom and my dad. I didn't come from no broken home. I'm not saying I'm not trying to castigate people who come from that, but like I said, if you come from that, you need to heal from that and then give people edification.
Right.
So that's why I say, like, it's no reason for me to weaponize the information, because all my information is going to come from a genuine place. I'm not trying to get money from people and trying to, weaponize it, to get ladies and stuff like that. That's a bunch of BS.
Oh yeah. No, I agree. And I feel like it's the people who've been, what they say, you got to go through some things to get through some things. You know what I'm saying? So like the people who've been through a lot, those usually make the best leaders. The ones who get healed, the ones who get refined, the ones who tap into inner self and who elevate themselves in their mind's eye. You know what I mean? Because they've been through so much.
We talked about Malcolm. You remember you had the show with Malcolm X.
Yeah.
How do you think he was able to get to where he got to? He healed.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? When he became a spiritual leader, he wasn't into the hedonistic culture. He wasn't messing around with women. The FBI, when they looked at the file, they said he was the most righteous man they ever seen. Yeah. Right? He came from the streets, though.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He came from the streets. He edified himself, got the knowledge. Then that's when he became a leader. See, the thing is, people, they getting a lot of knowledge, not healing, and then they end up in detrimental situations because they didn't heal. Right. So that, you know what I'm saying? Like, Malcolm X is the perfect example of, what we're talking about right now.
Oh yeah. And that's why I always use him, especially when I'm talking to young people, because if there's nobody else that I personally relate to the way I relate to Malcolm, because his life path is very similar to my life path, almost identical in certain aspects. So it's like that connects with me. You know what I'm saying? Like that speaks to my spirit. And that's why I'm so much of a super fan of his, and like that's why I look up to him. That's why he's my hero, because when I looked at as a little boy, when I first heard of who this guy Malcolm X was, I remember seeing him and I just was like, yo, in my little young mind, it was like, whoever this guy is, he's the truth. Like he is like the most brilliant photo or visual I've ever seen of what I would, if I could define a black man, I would define it as him. You know what I'm saying? Because that's just how he had that kind of influence over me, like a magnetic pull. You know what I mean? It's never changed. So now I get the opportunity to talk to young brothers. He's the first person I talk about because I can relate. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's real, man. Like,
I remember watching his movie when I was little, and I told my dad, I probably was about like in middle school. I said, when I first watched it, I was like, I want to be a Muslim. I said, why? I said, you just watch Malcolm X. I want to be like him. I want to be a Muslim. You know what I'm saying? But even though, my stepmother, she a Christian or whatever, but, she didn't like the sound of that or whatever. But like I said, man, as far as like that goes, Malcolm X is the perfect example of leveling up. Yeah. You got to face your demons to level up. You got to go through the darkness to get to the light. The same story of Lazarus, right? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Even when you're looking at the story of Gehazi, he had everything, right? And then he weaponized everything that he had, and God took it away. Mm-hmm. But like I said, you got to go through the darkness to get to the light.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And shout out to Juicy's Planet. Yeah, she said it means a lot to not come from a broken home. It does. And I'm going to tell you another thing, too. I love when I see that. And I love, like, my friends who I know that grew up with both. You know what I mean? Because I feel like the majority of people that I personally know didn't have both of their actual parents in their life, from day one. And then you had people like myself who might have had one and then had a step parent. Then you might have some who might have had one or, no other parent, or some that didn't have nothing or nobody. You know what I'm saying? So there's so many different layers to these dynamics. And a lot of that does play a role on your psyche and how you kind of show up in the world. Because if you haven't got past the traumas that's been bothering you or bullying you or affecting you since you were a child, then you're going to do nothing but grow and strengthen every aspect of who and what you are, even the negative aspects. So there in turn, where you see the projection of negative energy or the projection of toxic energy or the projection of men with feminine energy or vice versa with women with masculine energy, because the balance has not been set, because the healing has not been done. And like that's a real thing, that we got to definitely work on, collectively.
It reminded me, in that situation with 607, Uncle reminded me of, it just reminded me of the fact that it was a lot of kids, just people in my city, they don't like me for no reason. And there's no reason for them to like me. I haven't done nothing to them. I ain't said nothing to them. I stay to myself. I'm an introvert. So it's like I said, when you have a certain energy of authenticity, it's going to disrupt people's nervous system. You know what I'm saying? Where, like I said, it's going to manipulate them so much to the point they're energetically out of balance, so they have no other reason to attack you. They're going to attack you every time. Because, like I said, you become a mirror. You know what I'm saying? So,
it's real. Even back in the day, like when I was like out there, you know, in that Detroit red part of my life, listen, like for real too, though. I promise on everything. Matter of fact, what's even more funny is I used to have books on the block, and I'm serious too. And the crazy part is they were Dr. York's books. I remember that. Like I used to literally have his books on the block on all nighters. We hustling, and I remember having the books with me because I've always been that guy who loved to read, who loved to study, who loved to learn. And I dealt with a lot of the same things you did, I'm sure, because even in school. Like they used to, because I was born up top in the Northeast, I moved down to the Southeast in like 4th grade. So when I got down here, like I taught different. So when I was in class, like, man, you talk like a white boy, you know what I'm saying? Like, because I taught proper English, but I'm like, nah, I don't know no white boy that talk like me. So if I sound different than you, then I just talk different, but I don't sound like a white boy. You know what I'm saying? It's like, there's a big difference between the two. But it's like, but it comes back to what you were saying that when you have a certain level of intelligence or information or knowledge or whatever, it could just be confidence. You know what I'm saying? People who have less than, they're going to automatically project because they feel inferior, which is self-inflicted, based upon what you have, which they perceive as superior, where you're not even looking at them like that. You know what I mean? So it's like, that goes back to like how important the healing aspects are with all of our journeys, because when we are able to do that, that's what makes me look at you and be able to say, yo, that brother is doing his thing, and brag and tell other people about it, because I'm proud to see a young brother doing his thing like that, because you could be doing a lot of other bullshit, you know what I'm saying? But you're not. So I got to give credit to that. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I've experienced what you've experienced, where there's some elders who don't want to see me do my thing because I'm not doing it the way that they want me to do it or how they did it. So it's like, we're always kind of in that state of evolution, to where we still got to kind of be in the state of being in the ring to kind of to fight off the BS, but also to continue to manifest the things that are good, you know, that we came to the world to bring forth.
That lets you know that people are not spiritual as they believe to be, and they just dealing with the aesthetic of it. You know what I'm saying? Right. Because, you know, that some people be like, they might look the part, but they don't think the part. You know, they still have a jealous energy, energy of envy. But, you know, it's like I said, you got to, you know, cultivate the balance in order, you know, to get to the next level. And you know, and it's a manifestation blocker as well. The more that you have jealousy, envy, or anything that, you know, to shackle somebody else's evolution, it's a manifestation blocker.
Yes, sir. No, I agree. Yeah, man. So there's a lot of them coming in, but I'm gonna go ahead and give you the opportunity if there's anything that you want to share with the tribe before we get out of here. Because listen, I was telling somebody on here a few weeks ago, they were like, how much longer can you go? Like, man, I can go as long as I like. Nah, don't say that, because they'll go all night. Look, don't say that, bro, because look, you don't know this tribe, boy. They'll keep on coming and we'll keep on going. So, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I definitely appreciate it, man. And the tribe showing a ton of love, man. Everybody showing love and appreciation for, you know, the work that you do, and, you know, coming through, man, and you know, spending the time tonight, you know, chopping it up and dropping jewels, man. I knew it was gonna be dope. I look forward to checking it out myself again. I can't wait, because it's a lot that has been shared, man. And so for that, did you want to share anything with the family before we get out of here?
Well, like I said, I got books and stuff coming up, and I'm going to Atlanta June 28th. I got other stuff, working with other individuals, all that stuff coming up. So just be on the lookout for that. So June 28th, Stone Mountain, Georgia, in Atlanta.
I should. No, I appreciate it, bro. So peace, family. We definitely appreciate all y'all for coming through. We appreciate the love, support. We definitely appreciate all the new subscribers, all the people who came through from Brother Bdell's channel, man, to show love and support, you know, for him coming through in these Ashe streets. You know, I definitely appreciate the love and support. Shout out to Zen's Mind. I agree with you 1,000,000%. It definitely was. I knew it would be. Yeah, man, I look forward to doing it again. You know, definitely when our schedules can align, I definitely look forward to
appreciate you bringing it up, man. I appreciate you bringing me on here, because you brought a lot of legends on here. So, you know, from Dr. Kava and, you know, Rye Hayes and I forgot his face. I forgot his, but yeah, Professor James Smalls. You know what I'm saying? You got a lot of legends on your channel, so I appreciate you bringing me on here, you know, giving, you know, a young brother a chance to come on here to dish out and demonstrate the knowledge. So I appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. Listen, it's an honor and a pleasure, bro. And like I said, for me, I appreciate knowledge and information no matter where I get it from. You know what I mean? I don't care if it's a child in preschool or, you know, a brother who's in his 20s or a young brother like who's in, you know, your age range, whatever. Because at the end of the day, like you said, if you remove the ego, it shouldn't matter who you're learning from. If I can get value from somebody, I'm taking it. I don't care where it comes from, because I know that's going to add to my tool belt. It's going to add to, you know what I'm saying, what I could work with in regards to my journey to get better, do better. So it's like, that's where I really feel like there's so much more work to do when we talk about this healing thing, you know, and especially like the emotional intelligence and the trauma. Like, we have to address these negativities. I look at it like a cavity in a tooth, right? If you get a cavity in a tooth, it might not bother you every day, all day, but it's going to time to time show up and turn up on you, right? So if you don't go and get that thing checked out and get a filling or get a, you know what I'm saying, get a crown or get it removed or whatever, or a bridge, it's going to come back and it's going to bite you in the ass. It's going to tear you up at some point in time. So I look at trauma the same exact way. Like, we can't walk around with cavities because it's going to continue to decay. So we have to figure out how to face it, how to address it, how to look at it in the mirror and start chipping away at, you know, healing from it and like getting through it. Because without doing that, we're going to constantly be in that hamster wheel of negativity, you know, living in a toxic, you know, internal environment, let alone external environment, you know.
Yeah, it keeps you stuck in a 1260 time loop. It's going to keep you stuck. That's why you got people that loop in cycles because of the trauma. Like, it's always a roller coaster. There's no evolution for that individual. So that means, like, you ever notice some people, they have a point they doing real good, then they fall off and come right back. It's a cycle. They stuck in a time loop of trauma.
Yeah, that's facts. Man, this was a dope one, man. I definitely appreciate you, bro. So, family, we give thanks for the love, support, you know, everybody who came through. We had almost 700-800 people in here tonight, you know, showing love on the live. So I definitely give thanks to all of y'all for coming through. Brother Bdell, I give thanks to you too, bro, for taking the time, man, coming in here, dropping these jewels. I knew it would be epic, so I look forward to making it happen again, man.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much.
Sir. Yes, sir. All right, family. So please don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe. If you've found value in this and, you know, it did something to you in a positive way where you found a light in it, you know, share it with somebody else who you think could benefit. And y'all check out Brother Bdell's page, Bdell 1014 on YouTube. Once I get the show uploaded and all that, I'll throw the links into his socials as well as his channel. And yeah, we definitely look forward to doing it again. We'll see y'all on the next episode. This is your host, Orisha Bami. Appreciate the love and support, family. We'll see y'all. Peace.
Peace.
Ẹni tó gbàgbé ilé ṣàpò ìyàgbọ́ tẹ́ǹtì ẹni takísà ní tàtàn ò bá padà sílé anítìjàkọ ẹja lọ pé eégún mo sí ẹni gbẹ́rẹ́ ìpàkọ́. Forsake not your ancestors and praise your